What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Happy hump day, gang. Welcome to the Wednesday show. Little bit of a rush through today's slate because we've got a 6:40 start time. Certainly don't want to go 3 hours plus on this one. Lot to talk about today, too. We've got a 10-gamer on DraftKings, 8-gamer on FanDuel. FanDuel's going for the little sprint. We've got a handful of games starting at 6:40 right when the slate locks, and then a couple games in the 7 o'clock hour, and then FanDuel's checking out for the rest of the night. DraftKings including the last two games, the 9:40 game and the 10:10 game, I want to say. The Rockies and Athletics and the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers games are the two that are differentiated across sites. So it's going to be an interesting slate to talk through. We've got a lot more pitching to work with today. We talked yesterday about how that slate kind of lacked a true ace. We saw some very good performances. One of them at very low ownership for Brian Wu against the Yankees, which we talked about being a possibility with all his talent. Could be the same kind of thing with Bryce Miller today. You know, Miller is very, very good, but the Yanks are the Yanks. We've got Nestor Cortes going for the Yankees on the other side of that one. Could be kind of interesting, maybe a little bit low-owned against that heavy strikeout Seattle team. We've got some premium aces on board, though. We've got a few pitchers coming back from injuries that we have to talk about. Might be some short starts. So it's going to be a wacky one. We're going to kind of dive right in, I think. It's probably the best approach rather than wasting time up top. Again, a lot to talk about and a limited amount of time to get through it. But let me say hi to everybody at least. Cujo's here. What's going on, Cujo? Cujo's hoping to be back with us on Friday. So I guess he was just popping in to say hi. But yeah, looking forward to getting you back here, Cuj. Is it still people working on the lines? It's a lot of work. Stephen B's here. Matthew Patterson's here. Matthew likes Rafael Devers. I actually took Tyler O'Neill from that lineup as today's home run pick overall. Devers, I think, is the home run pick from the Red Sox in the team by team. But yeah, no Tyler O'Neill in the lineup kind of disappointed me, but I do like that Rafael Devers spot. We'll definitely take a look at that. Who else is here? Andy Melman's here. Stephen Leibowitz. Clintwood's back. What's going on, Clintwood? I am feeling better, buddy. Thank you. Usually whenever the allergies kick up, it's usually just like a day, and then I'm all right. Oddly, as I've said before, a lot of times if I have a handful of beers, I wake up the next day sneezy. I don't know what that is. But I think yesterday was just from going from Texas back to my parents' house where there's a ton of trees and some pollen and everything, and then waking up there and then moving and then coming back up here and not having seen my cat in a few days. He was all up in my face. So I think the combination of factors there just led to me sniffling and sneezing my way through the show yesterday. But yes, feeling a lot better today. Appreciate it. Colin Sutherland's here. Kevin Cash reporting in. Aaron Davis playing light. Need some bargain basement plays, though. I'm sure we'll be able to find some of those. Stephen Leibowitz saying Tyler O'Neill's been terrible this month. Yeah, bit of a decline, a turn down over the last couple of weeks, but definitely still a high-end player, and was looking to get him going a little bit. So, that's why I made him the home run pick. He graded out well in the spot, but if he's not going to be in the lineup, that's going to be problematic. Could still get me the pinch hitter. Every now and then we bullseye those by accident. So let's take a look at the slate here. So these are the two games at the end of the night that are only on the DraftKings slate. We'll get to those. But starting out, Texas and Philly, 10-run total there. Pretty high-end looking game. Dane Dunning and Taijuan Walker going on in that one. 4.89 total for the Rangers. 5.22 total on the other side for the hometown Phillies. Definitely could be some fireworks in that one, but both of those pitchers are capable of beating those teams. Neither one of those guys is a total slouch, so it's interesting that the run line is quite so high. What I have to look at actually is the weather. I do know we have some weather spots around the slate. Actually, that one's fine. Looks like the game in Cincinnati that we'll get to and the game in Pittsburgh are a little bit threatened there. And then those other ones are off of this slate. So it's a little bit less dramatic than I think it looked like with the coloring on Fantasy Labs. Second game up, Brewers at the Marlins. Just a 7-run total there. Couple of good pitchers, Freddie Peralta and Jesus Luzardo going in that one. 3.69 implied total for the visiting Brewers. They're favored, but not a gigantic favorite. 3.38 on the other side for the Marlins. could be a very, very strong spot for Freddie Peralta. If things go according to plan, Freddie is probably the top pitcher on the FanDuel slate. You get Tyler Glasnow right with him from that Dodgers game on the DraftKings slate at the top of the board. Padres and the Reds, we've got Nick Martinez and Michael King going. Michael King's been pitching up and down to the caliber of talent that he's facing. It's been kind of strange. This one should be a decent test for him. The Padres definitely favored here, 5.06 implied total for them going up against Nick Martinez. Should be an interesting day to look at Padres bats. 9.5 run total overall, 4.54 on the Reds side. They've obviously got a few interesting players for DFS purposes on any given slate, and if King shows up as the lousy version of King, then it could be a spot where we can maybe get him. For example, just of what I'm talking about, 2 starts back, King faced the Dodgers, went 7 innings, struck out 11, walked 3, gave up just 2 hits, no earned runs. Start after that, he faced the Rockies, 5 1/3, 7 strikeouts is good, 2 walks, meh, gave up a home run, 6 earned runs on 8 hits. That's what I mean by he's either pitching up or down to the competition. Giants and the Pirates. Jared Jones going for the Pirates. He's been pretty terrific, but he does allow a lot of home runs so far in his major league career. But a ton of strikeouts, a lot of swinging strikes, fantastic arsenal of pitches. Very interesting option. 7.5 run total in that one. Blake Snell going for the Giants. Just been making some pretty short starts, giving up some runs. Hasn't been pretty yet. So kind of a rough spot there. But any given slate, Snell can definitely find his form. Going up against the Pirates, not a bad spot for it. It's just I question the depth on that one. The Red Sox going up against the Rays. Red Sox have Brian Bayo. The Rays are bringing Ryan Pepio off of the IL. He was out with a leg contusion. He got hit in the leg, I think, with a comebacker and came out of the game. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Memory's a little spotty. It was a couple of weeks ago. It was back on the 5th. Came out of the game against the Mets. He's a very talented young pitcher. He does have strikeout upside. He has been roughly effective. There's been a couple of bumps along the way this season, but overall been pitching pretty well. It's just question what the depth looks like, and definitely seeing a little bit of home run upside from the Red Sox going up against him, and then getting into the Tampa Bay bullpen could get interesting for that Red Sox lineup. But again, no Tyler O'Neill there. It's one to take a look at. The Rays are at a 3.98 total as the favorites in that game. The Red Sox come in at 3.59. Might have had some minor movement in that line. When I do the update later on, we'll get it all situated. The Mariners at the Yanks. Nestor Cortez going for the Yankees. Bryce Miller for the Mariners. Either one of those pitchers could be successful here. We could also see some fireworks. Yankee Stadium, nice day. It's 85 degrees right now here in Jersey. So definitely some upside for bats. 4.80 implied total for the hometown Yankees. They're favored, but that's not a crazy high total for them. A little bit of respect, at least, for Bryce Miller. And then on the other side, 3.80 for the Mariners. A little bit of respect for Nestor Cortez, who is capable of finding a little bit of strikeout ceiling against this Mariners team, and he's been pitching well this season overall. A couple of bumps for him as well along the way. A few games with 4 earned runs allowed, but by and large, the numbers haven't been bad for Nestor, and he's not crazy high priced. He's a fair mid-range option. The White Sox against the Blue Jays. Chris Bassett going for the Blue Jays. That could be an interesting spot going up against one of the rough teams in all of baseball. You can see just a 3.40 implied total for the White Sox. Blue Jays heavy favorites at 5.21. They're going up against Nick Nastrini. Could be a targetable spot for some Blue Jays bats, but they've also been very up and down this season, and some potential for letdown in that one too. Braves at the Cubs. This one's down at 8.5 runs after the expected fireworks kind of fizzled out in a 4-3 game last night, as predicted by Tizzlemane. He got that one right for sure. Did not get we got a couple home runs out of the Braves. We got some upside for got some upside in unknown phone call. I love when unknown numbers call. We're gonna answer. That's why polls don't work in politics. Anyway, not to get political. So as I was saying, that game didn't hit the fireworks. We got a couple home runs out of the Brave side. Orlando Arcia got one. Mikey Harris got one. But the game overall didn't really shoot out like we were hoping. Today, just an 8.5 run total in that one. It's Max Fried against Justin Steele. Couple of pretty high-end lefties. Couple of guys who were very capable of keeping the ball in the yard by and large. Steele's had a couple of rough games in a row. Gave up 3 home runs 2 games back to the Pirates, and then faced the same Pirates team. Gave up another 2 home runs in his most recent start. But 2 high-end pitchers in that one. 4.58 on the Braves side. They're favored on the road in Wrigley. 4.02 implied total for the Cubbies. Last 2 games on the slate, on the DraftKings slate, that was it for FanDuel. Austin Gomber going for the Rockies. Mitch Spence going for the Athletics. Spence has made 1 start this season, 4 2/3 in his most recent game. Don't expect a ton of depth, but he was pitching largely in bulk relief. 3 inning appearances, went 4 2/3 in another bulk relief appearance. 5 innings is not necessarily completely out of the question. We'll give him a look. We'll see if he's worth it at the from the bargain bin. Gomber, pretty tough to trust overall. Does have a few games in a row with limited runs, though. 1 earned run allowed over his last 3 starts. Has gone in at least 6 innings in each of those, so we're talking about quality starts there. Hasn't been completely awful going up against a low-end squad. Worth a look on the 2-pitcher site. And then the last game up, Tyler Glasnow going up against Ryan Nelson. Kind of a mismatch there. The Dodgers monster favorites. 5.11 implied total for the Dodgers. A 3.01 implied total for the Diamondbacks going up against Glasnow. So definitely a very, very high-end pitcher at the end of the night on DraftKings. And then Ryan Nelson, a pretty low-end pitcher, seems pretty targetable with Dodgers bats. On FanDuel, you get 3 totals above 5. You get the Blue Jays, the Padres, and the Phillies all above 5. And then on DraftKings, you add the Dodgers to that at 5.11. Some other interesting spots like the Yankees, of course, in the high 4s. But really, there's a lot of pretty low end, and that reflects the quality of the pitching slate. A lot of mid-3s and just under 4 for some of these. So it is a pitching-friendly slate. Jumping over to that board. Trav, what's going on, buddy? Travis says, love when my afternoons in the Crane aren't busy at work so I can focus on what really matters, the Rotoscouts baseball show. Appreciate it, pal. Andy Melman's looking at the Texas stack. Always interesting. Real spill. Let's go Rangers. Looking for that Rangers win. Talking about the Texas Rangers, or are you talking about the New York Rangers? New York Rangers starting their series against the Florida Panthers tonight in the Eastern Conference Finals. Looking forward to that one. Anybody watch the Celtics game last night? Pretty great first game in that Celtics-Indy series. Obviously was disappointed by my Knicks. Just devastated too much by injuries. And then that Game 7, I was watching that in Texas all hungover on Sunday. That Game 7, Indy came out, shot 80% for the first half? Just put the Knicks under and they could never get back. But really high-quality game yesterday. Got the double bang on the Jalen shot to ice it. Gotta love Mike Breen. Injuries beat the Knicks, exactly. It'll be interesting to see what they can pull off in the offseason. Got to get some support for Brunson. I'm not totally anti-Randall. I've talked about this before. I think if he ends up being the guy, it's all about health with him. When he's out there, he's perfectly fine. But they were exposed for the lack of a competent second scorer. A lot of those close games, it was Jalen 1-on-5. DiVincenzo doing what he could. Josh Hart obviously is the heart and soul of the team, no pun intended, and does a ton of work and ends up scoring some easy buckets. But he's not a reliable scorer when Brunson's triple team trying to drive the lane and tries to kick it out. You're getting mediocre shooters, you're getting mediocre scorers. So they definitely need a solid second option or another star. They've got a couple interesting contracts to be able to move, though. Bojan Bogdanovic and potentially Randall. Randall would obviously be in a trade for a high-end player. Bogdanovic would just be more of a salary, but he's on an expiring. So some interesting pieces to move around. And then they got to worry about bringing back OG. They got to worry about bringing back Hartenstein. I almost forgot his name already. It's been like 3 days. Hartenstein's going to be the issue to sign. They only have partial bird rights on him. Anyway, we're here to talk about baseball. So Freddie Peralta, as I said, going up against Miami, just a super high-end pitcher overall, and very high priced. Going up against a really weak squad, it seems like a pretty easy spot to pick off. But we've all been there when Freddie's not quite delivered in these circumstances against a low-end team. So there's no hesitation in taking that option, but I do think it's worth considering across a full slate. A lot of these other guys that are on the board that are going to probably be a little bit less owned than Freddie. On FanDuel, you don't get Glasnow, so that takes one of the other, the only other comparable option off the top of the board. There's a dip if you look at the projections, and Glasnow actually would have been the top projected guy on the FanDuel slate. Actually, why is that sort of weird? Glasnow is the top projected guy. Why were those two out of order? That's weird. Oh, it probably changed a little bit when the lineup went. No, we don't have a lineup for that one. I don't know. So Glasnow, the top of the board overall on DraftKings. Obviously, also a very high-end pitcher, not available on the FanDuel slate. This price is from the FanDuel late slate. So if you're looking at that one, Tyler Glasnow at $11,000, obviously is super expensive, but looks pretty terrific in that spot in the low total. And here are your other pitchers from that 3-game slate. So it's kind of clear it's Tyler Glasnow, or you're just rolling the dice on some of these cheaper guys. Gomber would probably be my choice there. You can see he's slightly higher projected on FanDuel than those other guys. We'll get to those guys in a minute. So as I was saying, there is a dip from Freddie down to Jared Jones. He's got a ton of upside. Again, he's a very, very good strikeout pitcher, but he's given up some home runs. The Giants are showing a little bit of power against him. 10-6 on FanDuel, I'm willing to pay it. 9,600 on DraftKings, definitely willing to go there. Chris Bassett getting a little bit of a matchup bump, 8,400, 7,200 across sites. Very clear option from the mid-range. I think he makes a ton of sense on FanDuel as an $8,400 guy. 7,200 is probably too cheap for the spot on DraftKings, but we've all been disappointed by Chris Bassett before as well. Nestor Cortez at 96.93. I lied before. The price is actually up a little bit. I hadn't noticed where he was priced. But typically he's a little lower than that in the high 8s to low 9s kind of range on a FanDuel scale. I don't love paying that much for Nestor, but I do think he's got a lot of upside against Seattle with all the strikeouts available, and he's talented and pitching well. So I'm willing to go there, but I'm definitely going to consider some other options. Pepio is a big question mark. Since it was just a leg contusion, he didn't make any rehab starts, but he's been throwing. So I don't know that he's limited by innings. I didn't want to play the guessing game of limiting his innings. So he projects out just, kind of fine here over, I think it came up with whatever the model spit out was, 5 and change. So projects out just fine, but I do think that he comes with an asterisk for it could be a shorter than usual start. He might just get 5. So there is a little bit of that, but I think that's also baked into the price, particularly at $7,500 on DraftKings. It definitely is baked into the price. $8,800 on FanDuel, a lot less so. Obviously you got Bassett right there at $84. You could pay up a few $100s more and go to Nestor. You could also pay down and get Blake Snell against Pittsburgh. He's just been pitching kind of poorly and making really short starts also. So 5 innings here, 5 innings there. It's a price kind of a thing because they project out basically evenly. Snell slightly ahead on the FanDuel scale, slightly behind on DraftKings. Over on DK, Snell's 83, so it's a different price consideration than Pepio. Pepio compares more with Jesus Luzardo over there, who's at 78 against the Brewers. That's an interesting spot. Luzardo's got a lot of talent. That's not a bad price for his upside. So I do think you could go there instead of here. You could go definitely a pivot from Bassett. If you're more interested in Jesus Luzardo, there's definitely strikeout upside. At 9,400 on FanDuel, I think they've got it right. And he probably, comps fair with Nestor for the matchup. That's not all that far off. Bayo capable enough of beating this version of the Tampa Bay team with some of their key players struggling. Not a bad price for him at $8,700, $8,000, particularly on DK. That's kind of a nice price. There's a wide value range on DK today, or upper mid-range type values. Miller could do the same thing that Wu did yesterday against this Yankees squad, where he was holding them down pretty well through the first handful of innings. Miller's got more talent, I think, than Brian Wu does. So there's a lot of upside there. There's also a lot of danger. It is the Yankees in Yankee Stadium on a hitter-friendly kind of a day. 9,100, 8,500. It's probably about the right price to find out, though. There is pretty significant strikeout upside for Bryce Miller. He's got the talent to go get some strikeouts and definitely has the talent to keep the Yankees off the board for a few innings. So interesting enough spot, but I think it's fairly projected right in the middle there. Justin Steele, 7,500, 7,000 across sites. Just going up against the Braves. Pretty challenging matchup for him. The prices are very cheap for a talented pitcher, but this is also just his fifth start of the season. So maybe a little consideration about a short start. Definitely a tough opponent. Braves are favored in that one. But that's a really good price for Justin Steele and his talent level. In his last start, he went 5 2/3 against Pittsburgh. He struck out 7, but he gave up the 2 home runs and gave up the 3 home runs to Pittsburgh in the game before that, like I mentioned before. On the other side of that same game, Max Fried, also not really drawing a massive projection. He's had some bumps in the road along the way this season. He hasn't been pitching in peak form, not a peak strikeout option, but projects out just fine and does have a little bit of a ceiling, 9,000, 8,600. Fairly priced, but there are a lot of guys at similar prices above him. Dane Dunning, I don't love the matchup against Philly, but another guy who just kind of lands in that mid-range. For 91 on FanDuel, I don't think you really need to mess with it. You could succeed there, but why instead of some of these other guys against way worse teams than Philly? I don't know that you want to go there at 91. Dunning is also coming back off of the IL. What did he have? A shoulder, I think? Was that what Dunning's issue was? So I also don't know what the depth looks like here for Dane Dunning is the point. On DraftKings, there's enough talent there. Oh, that's right. FanDuel has this show me only the guys who are starting, show me the backups, etc. It was a shoulder for Dunning. It was a right rotator cuff. So that's kind of concerning. He last pitched, I think it was the 4th. Where is he? Where the hell did he go? There he is. Yeah, last pitched on the 4th, went 4 2/3 in that one. So you could have some innings limitations for Dane Dunning. That's the reason he would be a little bit more off the board on DraftKings at that really appealing $7,100 price in addition to the matchup. But at this price, a healthy Dane Dunning, if I could be even 5 innings, a short of 5 innings of him, there would be enough upside to play him as a SP2 and roll the dice from the value bin a little bit with him. It's just, the 5 is even in question. First start back, rotator cuff, not ideal. Mitch Spence, like I said at the top, just making his second start of the year, had a bunch of relief appearances, 3 innings, 4 2/3 was the start that he made. He's just not a high-end pitcher. He only costs $4,000 on DraftKings. If we get 4 and change, we'd like, obviously, to get 5. But if you get a few innings out of him, it's not completely crazy. That start was a full 5 days ago, so, I mean, it seems like he's going to be lined up for maybe 5. For $4,000, it's not totally nuts. If you're playing on that late-night slate on FanDuel, $5,500, considering the opponent is going up against the Rockies, not totally crazy. Austin Gomber for a little bit more at $6,800, considering his opponent. I do think there's a little tiny sliver of upside, considering also how well he's been pitching over the last few. The idea that he does pitch fairly deep into games, and they don't have much else to work with. Not terrible from the bargain bin at $68. Nick Nastrini seems like he's lined up to get pounded. Vegas really likes that Toronto side, and just not a high-end pitcher. Just went 3 innings in his last game, gave up 5 earned to the Phillies. Moderately comparable opponent. It looks a little bit rough for Nastrini from the value bin. Taiwan against Texas, not really grading out all that well on this one either. This is Taiwan's 5th start of the season. And last one, he only went 3 1/3 on the 16th. He came out with a toe injury but by all accounts is fully healthy. But I do think there's a little bit of question about, does Taijuan get a sixth inning here? So a little bit limited by that, a little bit limited by the talent level and the opponent. But any given slate, he could maybe find you a little upside for 6,200 on DraftKings. It's not out of the question that he gets to the win, pitches 5 clean innings, gets out there and delivers an okay score for that. Ryan Nelson, I don't think you tangle with against the Dodgers. Nick Martinez not grading out well against the Padres. Let's see if we got some lineups here. Well, not for this one. I was hoping that Rangers lineup would have dropped. Doesn't look like it did, though. So, starting things off with Taijuan. Hey, Trav. Dennis is here. Dennis saying Steele threw 88 pitches last inning. Yeah, that would look like a pretty decent start. I'm looking for higher end than Lowry Markkinen. I think that's kind of he's not a bad player, but I feel like that's a little bit of a lateral move. I think if they're moving Randall, they definitely need to get a little bit more of an upgrade than that. What that looks like, I don't know, but I think their sights need to be set on the the next tier up. And there's rumors about like Jimmy Butler. There's rumors about Paul George. There's rumors about Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. I'm trying to start rumors about LeBron James. Like, there's all kinds of high-end names that you could throw into that mix that would, I think, be the kind of level of player that they're targeting. I don't know that the Knicks do that, the market. I think they would kind of want to bring their chemistry back if it was just that kind of a player in return. Could be wrong. Keep in mind, they've also got a huge war chest of first-round picks that they can work with, too. So they've got assets to trade. Steven Leibowitz likes Markkinen over Randall. Yeah, I would have to look at it, but top of my head, it seems, like I said, a little bit more lateral. I'm not saying that Markkinen's not better than Randall, but it's not the upgrade that I think they are shooting for. I think they've got their sights set higher. All right, so Taijuan, again, so this first game up, both of these pitchers are potentially a little bit limited. I think Taijuan's most likely going to get 5 and change into the 6th. First 3 starts, he went 6 1/3, and 6 innings. That was on the 28th, the 5th, and the 11th. And then on the 16th, he only went 3 1/3 and hurt his toe and came out of the game. 1 strikeout in that one. He'd given up 2 earned runs and a home run to the Mets. But overall, he's a capable enough guy. It's just not a super high-end strikeout pitcher. Right now, the numbers are a little bit off because of the limited innings. He's given up some home runs along the way, though. Home run in each of his starts so far this year. 2 in the first game, 1 each in the next 3. Stuff Plus hasn't really graded him out well. 4.38 ERA with a 4.83 xFIP last year, 172 2/3 in 31 starts. Just an 18.8% strikeout rate, a little bit high on the walks. Mediocre strike throwing ability. So not a high-end option going up against a fairly high-octane Rangers lineup when things are going well. Couple of threats here for sure in terms of Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, depending on if he's back in the lineup. He's been banged up over the last few, has missed some games. But it's a potentially very, very deadly opponent for Taijuan. So with that, with the innings potentially being limited, if that toe is still a little bit sore, if it acts up on him when he starts pitching, it's mostly off the board at 86 on FanDuel, and it's a dice roll at best at 6,200 on DraftKings. He's on that board. He's in the bargain bin, but there are better options. Dane Dunning, again, 4 2/3 in his last start back on the 4th and came out with some rotator cuff tightness. That really concerns me. 7,100 on DraftKings, 9,100 on FanDuel. I wouldn't touch it on FanDuel. Not against this opponent. Like, why do you want to tangle with the Phillies in that spot? Just looks a little rough. 71 on DraftKings. It's another spot where you're just rolling the dice on a guy who might not pitch a full game or, even a full 5 innings. Why would you want to do that against the Phillies? If he was facing the Rockies, then, maybe you'd have a little bit more upside there. The Phils are pretty good. So I don't really like the spot for Dunning either, even at the 71. 91 is just off the board for me on FanDuel. I do think with all of that in mind, you could probably take a look at both of these teams. Again, we've got a high total in that one at 10. Both of these teams in two of the higher overall implied totals of the day. So it seems like a spot to check out some bats. You can see all the power coming through for the Rangers. Really hoping that we get this lineup in the next little bit, because I want to see if Garcia's in it. If you're waiting out that Orioles-Cardinals game, it apparently is expected to resume play at 4:20. That's per Underdog. So assuming this is the version of the Rangers lineup that we get, Semien and Seager, obviously very high-end options off the top. Seager up to 246, 335, 383, just a 137 ISO, but he's at a 100 WRC plus, creating runs at league average. The barrels are there, 13.5% barrel rate, just 42.6% hard hits. That's a dip year over year, and especially from last year. The barrels are down a little, but that's still a very good barrel rate, just independent of anything. 9.75 for him to lead the team in the home run model. You get Semien at 8.30. He's got 9 home runs on the season. Seager's got 7. There's tons and tons of ability there, even with both players a little bit up and down from their typical form. Both guys very low strikeout. Seager draws more walks than Semien does, but they're both able to get on base and do so at a better clip than this. But neither one's been completely incapable. 37-35 on FanDuel and 55-54 on DraftKings. Definitely a discount for both of those guys. Nathaniel Lowe, still cheap. 4,500, 3,000. 272, 382, 379 over 123 plate appearances. He's hit 2 home runs, creating runs 22% better than average. He's not driving the ball as effectively as in years past. You can see the premium contact is down a little bit. 2.6% barrels, 36.8% hard hits, down from significantly better premium contact. Strikeouts and walks right about where we expect him, still contributing along the way, and does have some pretty interesting left-handed power in this spot. So I like Nathaniel Lowe for cheap pricing. If Garcia's back in the lineup, he's a star. 11 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 240 ISO, 116 WRC plus. He's been dealing with soreness somewhere. Not too helpful. I think it was, I want to say either elbow, forearm, shoulder in one of his arms. But they were not expecting, he went for an MRI or went for an exam and came back saying, everything's supposed to be fine. They were just looking at it as general soreness. They were actually expecting him back yesterday and didn't end up playing yesterday. So we'll see if he's in there today. But would be a key bat in this lineup. 3,700, 5,600, a little bit cheap for him too. The fact that you can get these four for an average of 5,200 on DraftKings, average of 3,475, call it 3,500 on FanDuel, getting a bit of a discount there. Josh Smith, 276, 364, 414, still holding down a good on-base percentage, still creating runs 24% better than average. I still like the numbers overall to cool further than they have. Not a ton of power upside, not a ton of stolen base upside, but as long as he's in the lineup somewhere around that level, he's perfectly playable. $2,700 at shortstop is probably a little bit better on FanDuel, but then you're blocking Corey Seager unless you use him at util. Don't know that you want to occupy a lineup with Josh Smith that way. $3,700 on DraftKings at third base. The reason I said better at shortstop, he would be cheap at that position. $2,700 at third base, $3,700 at third base on DraftKings. I don't love that player at that position. You can see the low end 3.56 in the home run model, 31.5% hard hits this season. Not my favorite option. Jonah Heim, 40.3% hard hit rate. He's got 5 home runs on the season, a 101 WRC plus. Interesting option at catcher, 41, 3,000. I think I skip over Josh Smith and grab Jonah Heim if I'm just taking the top 4 off that lineup in a DK stack and want to fill it out with a 5th player. Evan Carter at 46.29 really hasn't delivered on his promise so far this year. Does have a 189 ISO with 5 home runs. That's got some appeal and was very good last year. Over 75 plate appearances, 306, 413, 645 with 5 homers and 3 steals. That's obviously a very small sample, could have just been a hot spot, but they definitely like the player, and he's interesting for those prices with a little bit of left-handed power from late in the lineup. Travis Jankowski, a cheap lefty, a little bit of speed out of him, has been underperforming a little bit so far, over 68 plate appearances. But if he gets on, he could definitely provide some correlated scoring. Interesting enough wraparound from the bottom for a cheap price. Leody Taveras, same thing from a little bit of a higher level, more of an everyday player. He's got 3 home runs, 4 steals this year. Was 14 and 14 last year, I want to say. 14 and 14 last year, but ended up with a 98 WRC plus. So he's another guy who's a cheap wraparound, but not a high priority. Maybe a little bit higher of a priority than Jankowski. On the Philly side, the big bat at the top of the lineup, 11.20 in the home run model for Kyle Schwarber, one of a handful of guys over the magic number for home run upside on a pitcher-friendly slate. You can see all the premium contact for the Phillies through the first three. JT Realmuto, very high-end catcher for 53. I think you could get one off JT Realmuto for that price if you want to. 3,100, he's absolutely in play on FanDuel. You have Bryce Harper, of course, at first base, so you're occupying the catcher first base and the util spot with those two. But it's still pretty high-end to do so. Realmuto at 280, 325, 427, a 114 WRC plus. Harper's got a 256 ISO and a 155 WRC plus. He's hit 11 home runs, slashing 280, 388, 537. He's obviously a killer at first base. Still probably $200 too cheap on DraftKings. $4,000 on FanDuel, $5,800 on DK at first base on both sites. Excellent premium contact numbers. There are strikeouts here, and Dunning has a 28.1% strikeout rate with a 12.3% swinging strike rate this season. So that's where maybe a little bit of the upside comes from for Dane Dunning if you had him assured of 5 or 6 innings. That's why he projects out okay into the mid-20s on the FanDuel scale, into the 13 range on DraftKings. But if it's shorter than that, again, you're going to be hurting for pitching points. Alec Boehm, 4.64 in the home run model. Bryson Stott, 3.60. Bit of a dip through the middle for power, and it doesn't really come back through the bottom of the lineup. But you've got plenty of home run hitters here, and you've got some really capable bats with Boehm at 333, 391, 533 over 202 plate appearances. He's hit 5 home runs. Stott has 5 home runs and 13 stolen bases. An interesting, fairly inexpensive lefty bat on DraftKings at second base for just $4,800. FanDuel at 35, he's correctly priced. He gets shortstop eligibility in addition to second base over there. A little bit of additional flex. He's got a 137 WRC plus on the season. Stott is an interesting option. Nick Castellanos for $4,300, $2,800 has not been good this season. A .093 ISO, 4 home runs, 202, 269, 295. But we know that Castellanos is a better player than that. Hit 29 home runs, stole 11 bases last year. Year before was a bit of a dip. The average was okay. The on-base was okay. But the counting stats were a little bit off. He's been a little bit up and down over the course of time. Like 2 out of the last 4 seasons were not great. We're mired in another mediocre start, but definitely has any given slate upside for these prices. Brandon Marsh, a lot of upside for $3,000. Hits the ball very, very hard when he makes contact over time, especially the last 2 seasons. Has 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 112 WRC plus from the left side. Not a bad option. Emilio Sosa, Johan Rojas, both guys are capable of contributing. Sosa's been the better player in a smaller sample, over 65 plate appearances, a 156 WRC plus, a home run, 2 steals. Rojas, more of an everyday guy, 2 home runs, 11 stolen bases, but just a 65 WRC plus, kind of a light hitter. Either one of those guys is an effective enough wraparound. Sosa's more appealing on FanDuel, where you get him at 3 positions for $29. Shortstop at $3,400. There are some very high-end shortstops on this slate, so I don't know that you want to occupy that, but either guy, again, capable enough of being a wraparound. Rangers bats, yes. Phillies bats, yes. I really don't think I mess with either pitcher with some questions about depth and just given the matchups. Next one up, high-end pitcher here. A couple of high-end pitchers, really. Oh, what the hell? What happened there? Hang on one second. One of these boards must have... The hell is... I don't know why that's not reading. AB to AW. Hang on. Aha. It's this one. I must not have copied this column over. Fangraphs has in the straight download in the name column, they use the accents, but then they give you this name ASCII where it takes the accents off. And if I don't copy it over, yeah, there we go. Guys who have accent marks, it's Jesus Luzardo. I think he's got an accent on the first name and the last name. I know there's one on that U. Anyway, so Luzardo over 7 starts, 26.9% strikeouts, a 5.02 ERA, but a 3.56 xFIP. Very talented lefty pitcher, 14.9% swinging strike rate, a decent 29% CSW. He's given up some power, given up some premium contact. That's a big worry against a Brewers team that's got some capable bats in terms of home run hitters. Let's see if we get this lineup in. 13% barrel rate so far this season, 44% hard hits on a fly ball trajectory, just 3.21% home runs over those starts. It's has not given one up in the last 3. Gave one up in each of his first 4, had a 2 home run game against the Yanks at Yankee Stadium, and then each of the other 3 gave up 1 home run to the Braves, the Angels, and the Pirates. But some very high-end strikeout games. Last time out, faced the Mets, went 6, struck out 7, 5-hitter, 6 shutout innings. 5 2/3, gave up 2 runs, but struck out 8 against the Phillies. And then at the Cubs, struck out 6, walked 3, gave up 2 earned, but went 6, just 3 hits. So Luzardo's got some definite ability here. He missed a couple of weeks in between the start against the Cubs and the start against the Phillies. It went from April 20th to May 11th. So we're dealing with the last 2. But he pitched into the 6th in both of them, completed the 6th in one of them since his return. So I think we're okay. It's been just 5 days since his last one. So regular start here. Enough ability to beat this Brewers team. They've got a 24.7% strikeout rate across this lineup. Same group of hitters last year was 23.6. So Luzardo's got the upside to get this team. We do have the lineup in for both of these teams. So he's easily on the board. I think the DraftKings price is pretty low at 78. FanDuel's got it right at 94. So he's more appealing on DraftKings. Will probably gain some popularity given the strikeout upside and the talent on that site. I would play him on FanDuel in this spot too. I don't think he's a crazy idea. At 94, you just do have a lot of options to work with. And then Freddy Peralta is potentially the most dominant option on the slate. But he's given up, what's that, 10, 16, 18 earned runs in his last 5 starts. That's not ideal. 4.17 ERA, but just a 3.29 xFIP. This is the real number for Freddie. 31.2% strikeout rate is terrific. 13.2% swinging, 29% CSW. You can see Stuff Plus. That's a nice decision point between these two guys. What the arsenal looks like by Stuff Plus. That said, Luzardo does have good stuff and some interesting strikeout pitches. Freddie is typically better than he's been at limiting barrels and premium contact. 10.9% barrels, 35.3% hard hits, just 86.1 miles an hour of exit velo. He gave up 2 home runs in the last game. That was against Houston. At Houston, went just 5, struck out 6, 5 earned runs on 8 hits. 3 earned runs in each of the 2 games before that. It was against St. Louis and at the Cubs. Struck out 8, struck out 5, but walked 6 against the Cubs. That was an ugly one, but managed to get through that with only 3 earned runs. Hasn't gone more than 6 innings this season, but has completed the 6th inning 4 times. Not the best overall option for depth, but definitely capable of giving us 6 clean innings with a good handful of strikeouts against this Marlins team. 21% strikeout rate for this version of the Marlins lineup. Last season, same group of hitters was at 22.8. I think there's a little bit of strikeout upside here. Jazz Chisholm down at 23.8% strikeouts this season. He was at 30.7% last year. 6 home runs, 9 stolen bases for Jazz, 112 WRC plus over 206 plate appearances. He's their best player. He's got the best DFS skill set as well. Interesting enough spot in the lineup if you're looking at the Marlins, but just a really bad matchup for them on the other side. They're frisky enough to be contrarian. They're cheap, so you get an interesting enough value team that is, top 5 maybe for contrarian purposes, but they're going to have a really hard time turning the lineup over from Nick Gordon, Tim Anderson, Otto Lopez, and Nick Fortes at the bottom of the lineup. It's a little shaky. So Freddie Peralta, 10-2 on DraftKings, 10,000 on FanDuel. Seems like an easy enough spot. He's very likely to be popular, but I think you can fire away with it. If you are taking Marlins on the other side, Jazz is the first and most obvious guy. Brian De La Cruz, 4,000, 2,900. Price is not really up that high for a guy with a 116 WRC plus, over 218 plate appearances. He's hit 9 home runs. Hits behind Chisholm, so that's an interesting 1-2 lefty-righty combination for fair prices. De La Cruz on an 11.1% barrel rate, 41% hard hits. The barrels are up a little bit. The hard hits are kind of in line with what he did last year. Capable enough bat, 4.86 in the home run model. Not getting overextended on home run upside against Freddie. Again, Freddie is very good at limiting premium contact, limiting exit velo, and home runs. So, De La Cruz, I think this is about right. Josh Bell at 39, 2,800 across sites. Six home runs for him on the season, but just a 134 ISO. 6.7% barrels is a big dip from 10.1. It's more in line with that season. Josh Bell had one big home run season and really never delivered the power that was expected from him. He's a capable enough hitter. If you're stacking this team, I do think he's on the board. I do think I don't know, these guys are about a tie for which one's the next highest priority. I would probably give it to Jesus Sanchez, considering the contact that he's making. But these guys are close. Berger's got a lot of power as well, but he's very limited in terms of his triple slash so far. He's got a 34 WRC plus, just a 106 ISO. He's hit only 3 home runs in 121 plate appearances. Has not been very good. You can see a little bit of upside at 6.43 in the model. Second highest rating on the team. Sanchez, you get from the left side, 3,500, 2,500, 2 home runs, 6 stolen bases. Again, good bat on ball skills for premium contact. Has never been shy about that, but really has never put together a long stretch of regularly good performances. You can squeeze a little bit of sneaky upside out of the top 5 here, though. Nick Gordon does have 5 home runs and 3 stolen bases and 86 WRC plus. He's arguably been better than any of those guys, but kind of a limited option. 3,400, 2,500. I'm not a big believer. Tim Anderson remains basically lost, a 36 WRC plus, over 132 plate appearances. Just been terrible. 63 plate appearances for Otto Lopez. He's not been uninteresting. 298, 339, 509, a 211 ISO, 3 homers, 2 steals, making very good contact. So if you're jumping down the list here, taking a 8-hitter from a weak team going up against one of the best pitchers in baseball, Otto Lopez should probably be on your list as your next man in after the top 5, and could easily replace one of the top 5 if you wanted. Nick Fortes at the bottom of the lineup has 2 home runs, maybe a little bit of cheap catcher power, but again, not a good spot, not a good lineup spot, not a good spot for a home run. We do have Gary Sanchez in the lineup for the Brewers. That's a plus 7.88 for him. We know that Gary can hit home runs, especially off of lefties. Makes very, very good contact when he manages to make contact. Always has. 13.8% barrels, 41.5% hard hits over 96 plate appearances. It's amounted to 6 home runs, a 244 ISO. Gary can still mash. He's very, very cheap. He's positionally blocked with William Contreras from the top of the lineup. Contreras, a much, much better hitter. Still maintaining his ridiculous start to the season. On FanDuel, though, you can play these guys as if one of them was a first baseman. I like that combo on FanDuel. You also get some interesting positional flex through this lineup on the FanDuel slate. A lot less so on DraftKings. Some pretty cheap prices. If you get a bad day out of Luzardo, and again, he's given up a lot of premium contact, could be a sneaky Brewers squad. They're the better of these two teams, so if they're both equally low owned, they're similarly priced. Not a bad option for maybe some contrarian value. Andrew Monasterio from the top spot, 27 plate appearances. He does have a home run, 2 stolen bases. Last year, he had 3 home runs and 7 stolen bases, over 315. This is probably the more accurate version of who this guy really is, but it's an interesting enough leadoff man for 2,200 with triple position eligibility on FanDuel, 25 with dual position on DraftKings. William Contreras, again, tremendous. He's been the best hitting catcher in baseball. 335, 411, 529, 7 home runs, 3 steals, down to a 194 ISO, but maintaining a 167 WRC plus. Fantastic contact. He's a tremendous option at the catcher position. It's just you're paying a premium for him at 5,900, 4,200 against, again, a pretty good pitcher. Yelich for 53.38, over 94 plate appearances, including some missed time, 321, 409, 580, a 259 ISO, 5 homers, 6 steals, creating runs 78% better than average on the small sample, and has never been as bad as his reputation would lead one to believe in terms of the decline. It was not quite as steep, and I say that all the time. I know it's something I repeat a lot about this player, but it's very, very true, and he's got massive upside. Even lefty-lefty, I have no issues playing Yelich here for $5,300 on DraftKings. That's really cheap. $3,800 on FanDuel, maybe that's about right. He's not going to be a 40 home run guy this season, but I mean, he is on his way to a decent home run total and some pretty good power output. Always been a very good extra base option, capable of stealing bases. Love Yelich for DFS. Willy Adames, 7 home runs, 8 steals, maintaining a good start, but down to a 179 ISO, 108 WRC+, 237, 311, 416. The cracks are starting to show, and Willy Adames is rapidly starting to revert to more Willy Adames-like numbers, but he's always been capable of hitting home runs, always been capable of stealing bases, has maintained a decent to good contact profile over time. Just usually more strikeouts, usually a lower average than what he had earlier, but again, starting to normalize already. 134 plate appearances for Joey Ortiz. He's been pretty good. 286, 391, 518, a 232 ISO with 5 home runs. Not the best contact in the world, but as long as the output is maintained and as long as the prices are still pretty low, not a bad option when you're stacking this team up. Definitely plays from the 5 spot. Jackson Chourio, coming on maybe a little bit. 214, 263, 331, 69 WRC+. No consistency at all, but a lot of talent, a lot of raw ability, and some bright spots along the way in amidst some real struggles. So still finding his footing, but playable from the 7 spot. Owen Miller, 2,300 at first base, not a great option. 2,000 dead min, second base, maybe on FanDuel. A mixer at best, but at least you get away with a minimum price player, but kind of low end. Owen Miller is nobody's hero. 5 home runs, 13 stolen bases, and 314 last year, but just an 81 WRC+. It's about the right level. Blake Perkins has been productive to start the season. 4 homers, 3 steals, 99 WRC+ for him. Just a good athlete from the bottom of the lineup, 3,900, 2,900. You can absolutely stick him into any lineup. Just not a guy to overly prioritize or run away with, especially from the 9 spot versus when he was hitting up here. And is definitely cooled after his good start. But having an okay year, 41.9% hard hits is good. Something to rely on there. Freddie Peralta, big yes. Jesus Luzardo, not a bad option, especially at 7,800 on DraftKings. Brewers bats, definitely over the Marlins bats. They're on the board, probably going to be fairly low owned. Some interesting options in there for cheap pricing. Marlins bats, more of a contrarian dart throw. Not incapable through the top 5, plus Otto Lopez down the bottom of the lineup, but there are better options than attacking Freddie Peralta. Garcia's in for Texas. Beautiful. It's good news for my dynasty team. Need him in there. Texas lineup, Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia, Smith, Heim, Carter, Hill, and Taveras. Who the hell is Hill? Derek Hill. Do not know Derek Hill. That's in the Jankowski spot. So not to derail everything, to look up Derek Hill. Derek Hill is 28 years old. Had a cup of coffee back in 2020 with the Tigers. 150 plate appearances. I don't remember this guy at all. 150 plate appearances for Detroit in 21. 92 plate appearances for Detroit in 2022. 50 for Washington last year. And has made 4 plate appearances this year, it looks like. For his major league career so far, that amounts to 308 plate appearances. He's hit 4 home runs. He has stolen 11 bases. That's not completely uninteresting. Just a 68 WRC+, plus, a .085 ISO, slashing 233, 285, 318. Sounds like at best a mix and match guy with maybe some counting stat ability from the bottom end of the lineup. Really don't remember the player at all. Doesn't stand out. That was Derek Hill in at the 8 spot for the Rangers. Michael the King going up against Nick Martinez. Really only need to focus, I think, on one of these pitchers. Although Martinez, outside of being low strikeout, hasn't been pitching poorly. 4.23 ERA, a 4.23 xFIP in his 4 starts, 38 and a third innings. Let's see. How much of that is relief work? We've had handful of relief appearances. He did go 5 innings in a bulk relief in his most recent performance against the Dodgers. Faced 16 hitters, gave up just 1 hit, no runs, struck out 4. We get that kind of a performance, we're good. 5 innings and in 6 innings. He's made 4 full starts on the season, not since April 30th. Went 5 in that one, went 6 in a full start in the game before that, and then 5 innings in 2 full starts over the first 2 weeks of the season. Strikeout high came in one of those games against the Mets. It was 6. Since then, the 4 strikeouts in the last appearance against the Dodgers is the next highest. That's how you get it at 17.7% strikeout rate, but he hasn't walked really anybody. Does have an interesting 11.5% swinging strike rate. Hasn't been bad for runs. Has been doing really well with limiting premium contact. No barrels allowed, really. No hard hits. No exit velo allowed. Just a 1.22% home run rate. Stuff Plus thinks he's okay. At 6,600, I don't really want to attack the Padres when they're showing a pretty high-end run total. 5.06. I don't really want to argue with Vegas for the right to play Nick Martinez here. In this ballpark, I'll add. So it's probably not a great option. Maybe it's a dart throw on DraftKings, but you're really thin. You're not getting any strikeout upside. You're just trying to buy 5 clean innings, I think, at 66. And we've got some guys in that range. 7,000 on FanDuel, I don't think you do it. I don't think you're getting anywhere near a quality start. Most likely, he gets nailed by this Padres team. Michael King is the interesting one. Like I said, has been pitching up and down to the level of his opponents. Against the Dodgers in 2 starts back, he was terrific. 11 strikeouts, 2-hitter, shutout, 7 shutout innings. 5 1/3 in the most recent start against Colorado in San Diego. Gave up 6 earned runs, a homer, 7 strikeouts, but 2 walks. Gave up 8 hits in that game. Was good against the Diamondbacks, but bad against the Phillies. So that was a good team he pitched poorly against. Bad in against the Rockies in Coors. Mediocre against the Dodgers further back. Had a 10 strikeout game over 7 2/3 against the Brewers. Kept them to just 1 earned run, 2 hits back on the 17th of April. It's been a mixed bag of quality overall. 54 1/3 does have a 4.31 ERA and a better 3.84 xFIP. But you can see the problems in the walk rate at 11%. 25.7% strikeout rate. That's down a little bit. He had a 29.5 in that hybrid role for the Yankees last year. Was throwing more called strikes. Swinging strikes down slightly, but not significantly. The Stuff Plus rating, we looked at that, and it's continued. We looked at that after his first 4 or 5 starts because it was low, and that is a significant dip. If I remember correctly, it was like 105 for the full season last year for the full arsenal. So not throwing the same electric stuff that he had last year. He's been giving up some power, 4.64% home runs, despite just 86.4 miles an hour of exit velo. Not a bad barrel rate, not a bad hard hit rate. So maybe some happenstance there. But he's had his problematic starts. One of them was a 4 home run game. That was against the Dodgers. Had a 3 home run game against the Phillies. I guess we could forgive those 2. Outside of those 7 home runs, hasn't given up more than 1. He gave up 1 home run in 4 games this season. But it's been a little bit all over the map. I don't know if we want to tangle with the Reds in the same ballpark where we were maybe not tangling with the Padres. Reds are drawing a 4.54 total against him. For 92 on FanDuel, I think there's better options. He's capable of getting there. There are strikeouts in this Reds lineup, including some of their best players. Will Benson and Ellie De La Cruz, namely. But it's kind of dicey at that price. 8,800, I think it's the same thing on DraftKings. There's just other guys in that mid-range where we don't necessarily need tangle with the Reds in this stadium. The Reds lineup is kind of interesting because there's a lot of cheap options. Going up against a gettable version of Michael King. If he's got his stuff, he probably beats this team and has a pretty interesting day with some strikeouts. It's just been a question mark about whether he's been able to bring his stuff to the ballpark this year. So you can take some shots with them considering where they're priced. Jacob Hurtubise in the top spot. 13 plate appearances has not been good so far. 50 WRC plus. has barely hit the ball. I know we looked him up at one point, but do it real quick. I am going to try and continue to make decent time here. It's coming up on 4:30. We've got a 6:40 start. Stolen base option, that's what it was. No power through the minors, but an interesting enough stolen base option potentially. But the issue for him, if you need to steal bases, you got to get on base. Hasn't been able to steal any bases. He's got a 182 average and a 308 on base over 13 plate appearances. In AAA so far this year, really didn't have any plate appearances. 12 plate appearances in AAA, 11 at the development complex, 11 in high A. 2 stolen bases across those minor league plate appearances. He's also 26 years old. Not an ideal leadoff option, but if he gets on, maybe he's going in front of Ellie. For 2,000, 2,100, you're not exactly spending a lot just to book a free square ahead of their key bats. Ellie De La Cruz, superstar, 6,300, 4,400. He's cooled a little bit. If you follow some of the analysts on Twitter, somebody was looking at the attack angle that Aaron Judge started the season with, and then since his surge, what his attack angle, what his swing plane changed to, and it's the reverse for Ellie De La Cruz, where he had an ideal attack angle through the early starts, and it is kind of reverted back to what it was last year. Judge flipped that and has obviously thrown the switch and really come on. But Ellie is still super, super interesting, and I figure that's probably a blip. Still hits the ball incredibly hard, has 9 home runs, has stolen 30 bases already in 197 plate appearances. If he gets on, he is going, and watching Ellie De La Cruz steal a base is an absolute pleasure as a baseball fan. Jeimer Candelario, 3,700, 2,600. He's very, very cheap for his upside. Only 4 home runs this season, a 163 ISO. The premium contact is not far off the mark for where it's been. He's a guy who finds home runs without necessarily a tremendous amount of premium contact. Hit 22 in 576 last year, just 13 in 467 the year before. Not an ideal option, but a cheap enough power bat who hits from both sides of the plate in the middle of the lineup. Tyler Stevenson for 3,800. I think you can maybe get away with a one-off catcher option there. He's been crushing the ball when he's made contact this year. 129 plate appearances, got 5 home runs, a 193 ISO, a 120 WRC+. Pretty interesting triple slash, and obviously a monster barrel rate, monster hard hit rate. The hard hits were a little bit on display over the last couple seasons. This is obviously a big step forward in a small sample. I don't expect him to keep this up all year, but you could book a cheap catcher home run there. Not terrible. Obviously, it's not huge in the model, 3.93 in the home run model. Not getting anybody excited with that number, but for a very cheap price, again, in a hitter-friendly ballpark, he's on the board considering the current form. Mike Ford for 33.26 has a little bit of lefty pop in that bat, 6.31 in the home run model. Tremendous contact in a small sample. Last year, that was over 251 plate appearances. He hit 16 home runs last year, 247 ISO. Tremendous premium contact. When Mike Ford's in the lineup for cheap pricing, he's an option. Not a tremendous player, career journeyman, but not uninteresting for 3,300, 2,600. Spencer Steer, multi-position eligible, 52 on DraftKings feels high, 32 on FanDuel. He's down to 224, 337, 373. The on base is keeping the WRC plus afloat at 103. 4 home runs and 11 stolen bases. Capable of getting on, creating some runs, creating some havoc. Capable of hitting the ball hard, but a little bit up and down so far. Definitely is in consideration if you're stacking Reds, though. Not off the board by any means. Nick Martini, 3,100, 2,300, 3 home runs on the season, just a 38 WRC plus, getting on at a 200 clip. That's problematic. Doesn't help you turn the lineup over. Jonathan India really hasn't been good since winning the Rookie of the Year a few years back. 2 home runs, 4 steals this year, and 80 WRC plus. And then Will Benson, there's a ton of skill here, but the guy's striking out at a 38.9% rate. That's up from 31.3 last year. Does have an 11.4% walk rate, can get on. The 291 on base is crushed by a 195 average and all those strikeouts, but he is capable of drawing a walk and getting involved from the bottom of the lineup. Makes for an interesting enough wraparound based on the skill set. 6 home runs and 8 stolen bases. He's providing counting stats, and the premium contact has been excellent when he's made contact. Will Benson is very good, or Will Benson has the tools to be very good, and showed us some good performance over 329 plate appearances last year. He had 11 home runs, stole 19 bases, created runs 28% better than average, a 223 ISO. I believe that this is who Will Benson is. So just with a rough start, there's no reason to really skip him down the bottom of the lineup if you're stacking this team. Again, more likely than not, King has a okay enough start unless the ballpark gets him for some home run upside. But I think the Reds are on the board. Padres are the more interesting of the two lineups overall, given the higher-end run total and the weaker pitcher with all the contact that Nick Martinez is going to allow to this team. There's some pretty good options. Luis Arraez, given all the contact, there's a pretty good chance Luis Arraez goes, 3 for 5 or better from the top spot. I'm assuming he's there. These are all out of order. Do we have the Padres? Oh, Bogey going on the IL. That's a Padres-related note. It doesn't look like we have the Padres lineup yet. But Xander Bogaerts won't be in it, which he's not in this projected one. So Arraez for 4,200, 2,800. He is super cheap for a guy who's hitting 318, getting on base at a 363 clip ahead of Fernando Tatis Jr. That makes that pairing really affordable. You can get Tatis and Arraez as a two-man for 3,200 on FanDuel and for 4,800 on DraftKings. That's very interesting. And then everybody else in the lineup is cheap, including Manny Machado at 4,832. He's got 5 home runs. He's been scuffling, no doubt about it. 82 WRC plus with a 121 ISO. I am still pretty sure that Manny Machado is not dead. He's striking out too much. It's a 6-point jump in the strikeout rate. He's not drawing his walks like he used to. But the premium contact is right where it's supposed to be when he's made contact. I don't think we're all that far off the mark with Manny Machado. So the price is just down. Jurickson Profar continues to hit 339, 427, 515. I don't want to have to say that he's actually good, but we're getting close to that kind of territory. 4,100, 3,200 is still cheap, which is the important part. If he's hitting third, that makes him interesting. Really, anywhere in this stretch, he's pretty interesting. Jake Cronenworth at 43-31 has 8 home runs, 198 ISO, 134 WRC plus. Can absolutely sign up for some Jake Cronenworth here. Again, not a super high-end player, but he's been overperforming his previous season's contact rates. He doesn't strike out a lot. He's capable of drawing a walk, definitely capable of getting involved. And the prices are not up for the current year performance. So Cronenworth's not uninteresting from the cleanup spot. Jackson Merrill, fairly cheap lefty later in the lineup. 284, 329, 381 from the rookie. 108 WRC plus, 3 homers, 7 steals. Not the highest end rookie option of the season, but one of the better performers as a rookie so far this year. And again, the price is not high. He still has shortstop eligibility on FanDuel for just 2,700. He's definitely in the mix if you're stacking this team, which I think you can absolutely do. Campusano for 38-29, playable enough catcher, 4 home runs on the year, 150 ISO, 107 WRC plus over 156. Ha-Seong Kim, 106 WRC plus. The triple slash is not where it should be, 214, 332, 364. He is still getting on base. 14.6% walk rate helps keep him afloat. The counting stats are okay. 6 home runs, 11 stolen bases. Some bad luck probably involved in here. 17.5% strikeout rate, 14.6% walks is terrific and an improvement on last year. So it's another player. I don't think we're all that far off the mark with Ha-Seong Kim. Tyler Wade for very cheap. If he's in the lineup, 4 positions on FanDuel, that's what makes Tyler Wade interesting. If he gets on, and he is getting on at a 333 clip over 81 plate appearances, makes him interesting enough as a wraparound for very cheap pricing, maybe a little stolen base upside. But he's another guy who's a career journeyman, never really delivered on any kind of promise for major league talent. So Nick Martinez is a low-end option in the bargain bin. Again, he's down here, right? We're not talking about a very high-end opportunity. But he's at least priced in the bargain bin and has not pitched completely poorly in terms of runs, home runs, things like that. Just doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. So not great there. Probably not getting a quality start on FanDuel, so I don't think he's in the bargain bin there. King is an option for 88.92. Projects out into the middle of the board, but a lot of guys on either side of him that have similar appeal to good appeal. He does have a strikeout ceiling, though. So there's a little bit of strikeout capability there for the pricing. Reds bats are definitely on the board. Padres bats are better. I didn't know that, Travis. That apparently Travis Duarte is saying that Blake Snell has a baby on the way. Is it like imminent baby? Is it like baby warning for maybe a short start kind of a thing? If he has to rush to the hospital, is it one of those? Or is it just the wife is preggo? Dennis points out about that Hill guy from Texas. He played for the Tigers and Nationals, so if you've ever even mentioned him, it was probably saying not to play him. A paternity leave starts tomorrow. All right. So since we're on this game, in his 3 starts this season, Blake Snell has not completed the 5th inning. He has not pitched since the 19th of April. 4 2/3 in that one, 4 innings on the 14th, 3 innings on the 8th. Don't know that we're getting a ton of depth out of Blake Snell. I do think I don't think the projection is necessarily crazy high because he could come out here and strike out 6 or 7 Pirates in 4 innings. I just don't think we're spiking a big game considering that he hasn't pitched and that he hasn't been good when he has pitched. Give up 5 earned runs over 4 2/3 to Arizona. Give up 7 earned runs over 4 innings to Tampa Bay and 3 earned runs over 3 innings to Washington. So it's not ideal. Hang on, I got somebody texting me. It was a grade 2 abductor strain. I had to look up what the injury was. I forgot about it. He threw just 60 pitches in his most recent rehab outing that was last Friday. So 5 innings maybe. Knowing that he's going back out it's probably just going to be a few days. He might not miss a start with the paternity leave, but I think 5 innings is probably our cap. 8,300, 8,100 is probably the correct price for a 5-inning Blake Snell start against this Pirates team. It's just I don't think he has ceiling beyond what this median projection is. It's not the typical situation, maybe with the win bonus on top or whatever. But it's really not the typical upside situation where we've got him projected for 5, but he could go 7, go 8, rack up a ton of strikeouts. I do not think you're getting that. So probably not with the baby narrative. And then on the other side, Jared Jones, 9,600, 10-6. He's an appealing option. 53 innings pitched, 30.6% strikeout rate on the season, just a 3.4% walk rate. He's got a 2.89 ERA with a 2.73 xFIP. He's been really good. You can see how much Stuff Plus thinks of him. 33 points better than average. That's one of the better Stuff Plus marks we've seen across a full arsenal. It's better than what Blake Snell's been doing on the other side. Snell has an 11.57 ERA on the season, by the way, in the 3 starts, but a 3.70 xFIP. This or better is who Blake Snell is, but just has not been on form. And again, short start coming. So probably off the board for me. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's a very limited option for this kind of money, considering that there's not really much ceiling there. 96 and 10-6. I'm willing to pay that, but I'd probably go to other options for 1 lineup. I probably go to other options for 3 lineups on FanDuel. 96, he's just easily in the mix on the DraftKings slate. You can see the tremendous 18.4% swinging strike rate, 32.7% CSW rate. We're not quite Spencer Strider numbers, but he's not that far off the mark. Pairing this kid and Paul Skeens is going to be nice for the Pirates going forward if they can both stay healthy. That said, you do see the blip, right? The 9.6% barrels, the 43.7% hard hits, the exit velo right on 90 miles an hour, and 4.37% home runs to the hitters that he's faced so far this season. He's given up a home run in 6 of his 9 starts. 3 games with 2 home runs allowed. Of course, he hasn't made a start. No, he has. Outside of a 5-inning start against San Francisco and a 6-inning start against the Cubs, in which he struck out 3 against the Giants and 4 against the Cubs, he hasn't been below 7 strikeouts in any of his other starts. You've got immense upside against the Giants team that is okay at limiting strikeouts, but this number here includes a 2.9% over 35 plate appearances for Luis Matos, so we got to take that out of the equation at least. We could probably cut the 16.7 from the bottom of the lineup for Marco Luciano over 18 plate appearances. And just to be fair, I'll even take out the 26.5 for Elliot Ramos over 49 plate appearances. That puts us at 23.3. You can see the same group of hitters in a more fair sample last year was at 25.8% strikeouts. So there's a ton of strikeout upside here for Jared Jones. I think he could have a tremendous start and rival the top options on either slate. But you are seeing some power here. Jorge Soler took a dip. He was at 14 something because we had him in the one of the top spots in the lineup in the projections. In the confirmed, he dips down to number 6, 12.11 in the home run model. He's only got 5 on the season, just a 153 ISO. He's been struggling over 156 plate appearances. Definitely not the player he was last year so far, but we know there's a killer power bat there. For 4,300, 3,100, I definitely think you can roll the dice with Jorge Soler against this pitcher. It's just, how many times does he strike him out in exchange for the one home run that he might get? And does anybody else get on base, or are you dealing with just a solo shot and Jared Jones winning a one-run ball game? Luis Matos off the top of the lineup over those 35 plate appearances. He's been really good. 265 ISO, creating runs 66% better than average. He's hit 2 home runs. Last year, over 253, he also hit 2 home runs. 250, 319, 342, 2 homers, 3 steals in that sample, 87 WRC+. Is a kid that they think a decent amount about, and had a fairly low strikeout rate at 13% last year. If he's not going to draw walks and he's not going to strike out, then he's putting the ball in play, and he's been hitting it pretty well. So he's not uninteresting for 34.25. Lamont Wade Jr., I definitely like the option. I think you guys know that by now. 147 plate appearances, getting on at a 463 clip, has created runs 63% better than average. The power's dipped a little bit so far this year. He's just got 2 home runs and a .097 ISO, but he's still making very good contact. High-end barrel rate at 99.8%. That's up slightly year over year, and the hard hits are way up. So that's kind of interesting. He draws a ton of walks, always involved, always getting on base. If you're stacking this team up, definitely an interesting option for just 3,600 on DraftKings and just 2,600 on FanDuel, considering he does have more power than what he's shown so far. Tito Estrada for 38, 3,000, 250, 275, 444, 8 home runs and a stolen base, a 105 WRC+, and has been a better player overall than that in seasons past. 14 home runs, 23 steals last year. A little bit more capability with the bat, 271, 315, 416. A little bit more on-base skill over time for Tito Estrada. So if anything, he's underperforming right now. He's another guy who doesn't strike out a ton, doesn't draw a ton of walks, so he's always putting the ball in play. Matt Chapman, a lot of ability to make premium contact, just depends on what happens with it after that. He's got 6 home runs. He's got a weird 5 stolen bases, over 201 plate appearances this year. He stole 4 all of last year in 581. He stole 2 the year before in 621. Weird output from Matt Chapman this year, 4,200, 3,300. Maybe he's trying to redefine himself as a base stealer. Pat Bailey at 3,100, 2,700, a playable catcher with power upside, 47.8% hard hits in a small 96 plate appearance sample. He's turned that into 3 home runs last year, 353 plate appearances, had 7 home runs on a 10% barrel rate, 38.4% hard hits. Solera talked about Heliot Ramos, 3,000, 2,700, 289, 347, 422, over 49 plate appearances. Another kid who's a relatively high-end prospect, didn't deliver in 60 plate appearances last year or 22 plate appearances the year before, but maybe coming together a little bit for Heliot Ramos. 15.6% barrels, 53.1% hard hits so far. Very small sample. Let's not get too excited, but maybe delivering on what he's supposed to be. 3,500, 2,400 for Mike Yastrzemski. Playable enough lefty power bat. Marco Luciano, 2,800, 2,300. It's just a matter of getting some of these guys on base ahead of whichever one manages to hit the home run. Jared Jones has not been blown up this year. Earned run high of 3. He's given up 3 in 4 of his starts with those home runs. Not unbeatable. But has been obviously, again, very good, and it's not like the ERA is off of the xFIP. So tough to say that the Giants are a good option today, but maybe they're sneaky. Maybe they're contrarian. They are definitely cheap on both sides. It wouldn't be my go-to contrarian option for one lineup, probably, although they are showing a lot of power. But across 150, I think a few shares is pretty reasonable. Pirates bats against Snell, and then whatever comes out of the bullpen for San Francisco. Reasonable enough, but more likely than not, we get an interesting, a fair version of Snell over those few innings that he does pitch. So maybe a little bit limited, but Andrew McCutchen's relatively playable. He's got 6 home runs, a 151 ISO, 103 WRC plus. Brian Reynolds has 5 homers and 4 steals and a 109 WRC plus on the year. You get Connor Joe, who is good at hitting lefties and has been good overall this year. 6 home runs on the season for him, a 189 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Edward Olivares does have power upside. It's been limited this year. 5 home runs at 237, 295, 423 triple slash. Good barrel rate, bad hard hit rate. If this continues, this should go up alongside it. Was better in terms of hard hits last year, but fewer barrels. Not bad for strikeouts for somebody who does have power. Kind of a mix and match option, though. Nick Gonzalez, 3,400, 2,500, 282, 310, 462, a 108 WRC plus in a small sample. Moderately playable from that spot. O'Neal Cruz hit 2 of the hardest balls in the StatCast era in the same game the other day. It's something like 20 some odd balls have been hit over 120 miles an hour in the StatCast era. He got 2 of them just the other day in the same game. Might have been yesterday. Giancarlo Stanton has like 14 of them. And then Aaron Judge has 1. I think Ellie's got 1. So O'Neal Cruz, tremendous ability to hit the ball hard. 18.4% barrels, 56.1% hard hits. He's at 260, 303, 441. He's got a 181 ISO and 7 home runs. It's just a lot of strikeouts. Does put the ball in play a lot, but needs to manage the strikeouts and the swing and miss a little bit. But there's tremendous raw talent there for 4,500, 3,000. Against Blake Snell and a lefty-lefty, it's not ideal for his first 2 or 3 plate appearances. But those 3rd and 4th plate appearances, maybe 5th plate appearances, if you're stacking the Pirates, I think you do still want him for those prices. Joey Bart at 31.28, mix and match catcher. Jared Triolo, mix and match infielder for very cheap pricing. 2 home runs, 4 steals, hasn't really been involved this season. Last year was a little bit better. 118 WRC plus over 209, had a decent average and on-base percentage. If you can get back to anything along those lines of contribution, he'd be interesting. 2,500, 2,600 for Michael A. Taylor. Similar kind of discussion, just hasn't really provided us the interesting output from the bottom of the lineup that we've gotten from him in years past. Last year, 21 homers, 13 steals. Was inconsistent, but was giving us counting stats from time to time, so we could get there. Right now, it's a little bit rough, but could Michael A. Taylor succeed against even Blake Snell in his first couple plate appearances? Absolutely. He's got the talent too, so not a bad option as a wraparound play from the bottom of the Pirates lineup, but they're fairly low priority. Even as a contrarian option, they're fairly low priority. Andy Melman's taking a couple shots on Snell. Again, that's why I think the median projection where it is, 15, 20, and roughly 30, probably not far off. But I don't know how much you can crest beyond that outside of just booking the bonus, and that's much more likely to just be the win bonus than a quality start if you're playing on FanDuel. Probably a better option to roll with on DK if you're going to roll the dice on him. I think that's where you do it because the 5-inning start doesn't hurt you as much, and that is a very good price for Blake Snell's upside against this team if he gives you the 5. So I don't think it's out of the question to roll some darts. Jared Jones is the better of the 2 options on both sites. Should be in line for a full start. Tons of strikeout upside. Have to be careful with some of these hitters with that. He's got a very low walk rate, but there are some good hitters at drawing walks in this lineup. And there's a little bit of power showing. So I think San Francisco's on the board as a potentially contrarian option. I think the Pirates, despite it being the other way around for the pitching matchup, I think the Giants are probably the better of the 2 teams for contrarian shares than the Pirates are. Red Sox and the Rays. We've got both of these lineups in already. Blake Snell. I read the name as I was scrolling past it. Ryan Pepio and Brian Bayo going. Brian Bayo going for the visiting Red Sox at 8,000, 8,700. Pretty low strikeout option, but a capable enough pitcher. 2 points above average, almost 3 points above average by Stuff Plus. A 3.96 ERA with a 3.50 xFIP over his 7 starts. But you can see just a 20.7% strikeout rate. Last year it was 19.8 in a bigger sample. Year before in 11 starts it was 20.5. Has been giving up some premium contact and power, but does have the ability to keep the ball down. Just a 4.9 degree average launch over that 157 innings last year. 5.3 over 57 and a third the year before. It's just this year at least, and for this season so far, when he has made mistakes, they tend to travel. 3.59% home run rate despite the good premium contact numbers because he does give up hard hits and a little bit of exit velo. 8.3% barrels is up a little bit so far this year, and obviously happenstance right now in a small sample, but that trend from last year has continued. You can see in a 57 and a third the year before, didn't make those mistakes. So if he manages to get through and not lose a couple against a Rays team that definitely has power but has not really been raking this season, you could get a good enough start out of Bayo. I think he's got a little bit more upside beyond the median projections. For 8,000 on DraftKings, he's definitely in play. He's ranks out dead center of the board and shares upside similar to these guys. You can't really convince me that Brian Bayo against a scuffling Rays team with some strikeouts is necessarily that much better outside of the price gap than Chris Bassett or that much more unreliable or anything. So I think he's on the board. Pepio, I'm unsure about the innings. That's the only real question. I think we're probably okay for 5. I question if we get 6. 7,500, I think he's priced correctly for that spot. I do think you can play him on DraftKings. He's got some strikeout upside. He's at 29.1% over 36 2/3 this season. Stuff Plus likes his arsenal quite a bit. He's got a very good changeup. 13% swinging strike rate, nearly a 30% CSW. Sub 1 whip with a 3.62 xFIP under the 3.68 ERA. So he's pitching exactly like what he looks like on the surface. Last year, 23.9% strikeout rate over 42 innings and was a high-end prospect. So he's delivering on what he's supposed to be. It's just we're coming back off of that leg contusion. He came out after 2 innings against the Mets. Again, I think it was a foul ball, not a foul ball. I think it was a comebacker off of his leg, and they took him out of an abundance of caution, and he missed the last few weeks. That was back on May 5th. 3 straight starts before that, he had gone exactly 6. Had given up just 2 earned runs in those 3 starts. 7 strikeouts in 1 against the Angels, 7 strikeouts against the Brewers. Middle start was against Detroit. He gave up a run on a homer, 4 strikeouts in that game. Between the short start potential and the idea that he is giving up a little bit of power, significant fly ball trajectory with 40.9% hard hits, 90 miles an hour of exit velo dead on the nose, and a 9.1% barrel rate. That's not ideal for limiting home runs. It was the same last year, so that's his hiccup. He does have strikeout upside, but he can get dinged for home runs a little. Rafi Devers, somebody mentioned it at the top of the show, 11.95 in the home run model. Looks like a pretty interesting option as a lefty, even if you're not stacking Red Sox, especially considering he's still just 5,500 on DraftKings. He's up to 10 home runs. I don't know what they're waiting for. We could forgive the fact that they had his price too low maybe a week or 2 ago, but he was never struggling. The premium contact was right where it was supposed to be and still is. It's up even. The home run total's at 10. The ISO's up to 278. He's created runs 58% better than average over 167 plate appearances, slashing 285, 383, 563. What does a guy have to do to get back to 6,000? He's a premium player for a discount. On FanDuel, 3,900 is about correct. You could easily price him between 4,000 and 4,200 though, given the current season and the pedigree and who he's been over time. Top end of the lineup, Jarren Duran, kind of interesting from the leadoff spot for just 46.33. He's slashing 271, 342, 462. He's stolen 11 bases. Hit 3 home runs, a 191 ISO. Good ability to drive the ball, 44.4% hard hits this year, 45.7 last year. A few more barrels this year. Strikes out at a fair clip. Can definitely feed some strikeouts to Pepio. The whole team does. 24.1% strikeout rate, including Rafi Devers. That's up like 4 points over last year, though. This is up like 4 points over last year for Robbie Refsnyder. Refsnyder's a journeyman, typically in there against lefties. He's been moderately capable. Just not like a big home run hitter, particularly not against this righty, but not a terrible option from the 5th spot for 3,700, 2,600. It's just you get him more, shows more quality in those platoon situations. Willie Abreu from the left side, 4,000, 3,100, has 4 home runs, 7 steals, 194 ISO, 125 WRC plus over 152. Another player with some significant ability to drive the ball and has been performing so far for them this season. So really like him. Connor Wong continues to mash, 350, 381, 521, a 150 WRC plus, 5 home runs. Missed for us as the home run pick fairly recently, I think, but I like him coming back. has always been good at hitting the ball pretty hard, was more of a sneaky home run option from late in the lineup in previous seasons, has been hitting third a lot this season and has been delivering. So definitely on the board for 3,700. I do think you can one-off him on DraftKings if you just want a cheap catcher with a great lineup position. 2,700 on FanDuel. Same thing. You can play him like a first baseman. There's really no issues going to Connor Wong instead of Garrett Cooper. Cooper's okay. 1 home run, just a 127 ISO and 93 WRC plus. Another guy who's more of a platoon player. 3,000 on DraftKings, 25. The price is okay for a 6.38 in the home run model, but he's no great shakes. David Hamilton, 2,700, 2,500 has been moderately productive. 2 homers, 5 steals. Not a high-end option, though. Vaughn Grissom, 2,500, 2,200, still scuffling. 143, 158, 161, a negative 19 WRC plus. Supposed to be a fairly high-end kid, but hasn't really found his form in the show right now. Cedric Rafael is kind of same thing over more plate appearances. 196, 225, 362, just a 56 WRC plus. 5 homers, 6 steals. Maybe a dart throw of a wraparound play. Does play 4 positions for 2,800 on FanDuel. Definitely keeps him on the board for some shares if you're building a lot of Red Sox stacks. The Rays going up against Bayo. Some underperformers right now. Johnny Diaz priced all the way down to 4,000, 3,100 at first base. After a killer season last year, Johnny over 216 plate appearances this year, 256, 324, 349. Not great. 0.092 ISO, just at league average for run creation. That's down from this last season. And the year before, he wasn't bad either. So we are way, way down in terms of on base, in terms of average, obviously. Home run power output, ISO, run creation. Way down over the last 2 seasons for Yandy so far. It's been problematic. Josh Lowe, 4,300, 3,200, playable. 245, 302, 449, but a 204 ISO, 2 home runs in his 53 plate appearances. Has made good contact so far and was very good for premium contact last year. Delivered a strong season last year, 20 homers, 32 steals. But another player in a smaller sample off to a slow start. Randy Arozarena, the most difficult start, 160, 251, 326, a 166 ISO. Does have 8 homers and 7 steals, so there's some counting stats there, but way down for premium contact. Up for strikeouts, drawing slightly fewer walks. Has not been good this season. It's been difficult, but there's tons and tons of upside there. Had a few games lately where I think he's turned the corner. What's he done lately? 501, 640 start again today. Yeah, maybe a little bit better for May so far. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those home runs have come in May. So maybe we've turned a bit of a corner and still been inconsistent, though. Only 1 game in May did he have more than 1 hit. And that was just 2 against the Yanks. A couple of stolen bases. Been rough for Andy. Brandon Lau back in the lineup. 3,800, 2,700 is pretty cheap for his power upside from the left side. Not an uninteresting hitter against this pitcher for those prices. Tremendous premium contact rates over the last few seasons. Tons of power output. 21 home runs in 436 plate appearances last year. Was not overly consistent. Wasn't in the lineup totally regularly. Suffered a few injuries throughout the year. So that explains the limited plate appearances, and they platooned him a little bit, if I remember correctly, last year. But did have a 212 ISO on tremendous contact. Year before, 266 plate appearances. Also some injuries involved in that season. 8 home runs that year. I think it was the year before that I'm thinking of. Yeah, year before, 39 home runs in 615 plate appearances. Had a 523 slug and a 277 ISO. Was tremendous for power that year. 14 homers in just 224 plate appearances the year before in that short, weird 2020 season. So there's a lot of power potential for the asking price on Brandon Lau right now. So if you're stacking Rays against a gettable enough Brian Bayo, Brandon Lau is easily in the mix. 6.77 to lead the team in the home run model today. Isaac Paredes has been their best player this season, was one of their best players last year. He's got 9 home runs, slashing 314, 398, 521. Basically the lone bright spot for this team right now. Jonathan Aranda for 2,800, 2,500. 3 positions on FanDuel for cheap price is okay. Last year, in 103 plate appearances, 233, 43, 68 with a 138 ISO, 2 home runs. Kind of low end for a 6-hitter. Jose Caballero does have speed, 17 stolen bases on this season, but just a 100 WRC plus, just a 315 on base. Needs to get on base and exploit the speed more. Richie Palacios has 4 home runs, 7 steals, just a 121 ISO, but a 111 WRC plus. He's been all right, definitely a mix and match option late in the lineup. Ben Rortvedt, a replacement level catcher, 119 WRC plus over 100 plate appearances is good. He's getting on at a 390 clip. That's definitely good. But you can see a total lack of counting stats. There's not a ton of DFS quality in Ben Rortvedt. Either pitcher is fine. Both are preferable on DraftKings. Between the two, Bayo is probably the more playable on FanDuel for 100 less, going up against the worst of the two teams with a little bit more security of innings. But neither is ideal on the FanDuel slate. I probably wouldn't play Pepio on the FanDuel slate. I don't know that we're getting 6. And then bats for sure. The Red Sox, most particularly Rafi Devers, but the top 4 is pretty good. And then you mix and match with the bottom of the lineup, which is kind of underwhelming. You could run into some issues turning the lineup over, especially against Pepio the first couple times through the lineup. So you're really hoping for that power to get delivered through there if you stack Red Sox. Stacking Rays, again, top end of the lineup through like those guys is appealing. And then these guys are at best mix and match options who are similarly not totally ideal for turning the lineup over, but at least you're getting good on base out of those guys down the bottom. So maybe a little bit of upside for that from the Rays. Both teams are playable. Let's see if we got the Mariners. Sure we do. We're well into the show by now. And we do. So Nestor's not uninteresting. It's just the price. Like I said, I thought it was lower than that when I was talking about him at the top of the show. But it makes sense that he's priced here. You can see for the season, 23.3% strikeouts, just 4.9% walks, a 3.56 ERA. The 4.02 xFIP is probably more accurate, more where he settles in. Is capable, certainly, of giving up a few Yankee Stadium home runs. 41.1% hard hits on a 23.2 degree average launch angle on 90.1 miles an hour of exit velo means probably that the home run rate so far is a little bit lucky. 6.3% barrels helps that out, but that's a little bit of happenstance baked into that. Last year, he was at a 4.14% home run rate on similar contact. Year before, 2.60, but he was better at limiting premium contact that season despite a fly ball trajectory. Truth may be somewhere in the middle for Nestor, but it wouldn't shock me if these Mariners hit a couple home runs. You could see some pretty good home run marks for this team. It's just overall, they've been really bad at basically everything. 28.2% strikeout rate for the season. Same group of hitters was just under 25% last year. Average on base is just 297 for the confirmed lineup. Average batting average is 212 for the confirmed lineup. Average slug is 365. That's not a good triple slash as a whole for this lineup. Their average ISO is just 153. On the average, they are creating runs 5% worse than the average player. Only Cal Raleigh and Dylan Moore, fucking Dylan Moore, only those two players are creating runs better than average. Let's talk about Dylan Moore real quick. Yesterday, I looked at him and Josh Rojas side by side, and I made the mistake of saying that Dylan Moore was the worst of the two players despite his current season performance. And then he went out and hit 2 home runs yesterday and had a monster day. He's up to 6 homers on the season, 6 stolen bases, a 350 on base, a 261 ISO on very, very good contact. I kind of forgot as I was saying that the ability for Dylan Moore to hit a little bit, to make some premium contact. But what I was talking about through that was, the triple slash each of these years is not great. The counting stat output in 165 plate appearances is fine. That's who he is. 255 the year before. Again, moderate triple slash, was getting on base more that year and stole some bases and created runs. He's not a terrible option, I guess, from the middle of the lineup. I will apologize to Dylan Moore. Obviously, he took offense. So he's on the board from the 5 spot. He's definitely more interesting on FanDuel for 3,000 at 4 positions than he is for 3,600 at shortstop on DraftKings. But maybe he's at least as good as Josh Rojas. JP Crawford off the top of the lineup, 3,300, 2,500 in a lefty, 194, 286, 290 overall, 74 WRC plus, just 2 home runs. Has not been good. Julio Rodriguez, 4,800, 3,100. He's at least at 268, 317, 325, but just a .057 ISO, 2 home runs, a 91 WRC plus. 49.6% hard hits is good, but it's a little bit of a dip from the hard hit rate last year. But the barrels are way, way off. Strikeouts are up a few points. Hasn't been all that good. Hasn't been the Julio that we know. Again, he did have a similarly slow start last year and finished very, very strong. This could be the day that he throws the switch against the lefty, but hasn't been good. Does have a team-leading 10.71 in the home run model, so give him that much anyway, over the magic number. Mitch Garver and Cal Raleigh just below the magic number. Pair of catchers, you can play them together on FanDuel. No issues with that, and skipping Ty France in that equation. You can definitely go there. You can grab these 4 guys together. I don't think that's all that bad on FanDuel for a fairly cheap price. On DraftKings, obviously, they're positionally blocked. Between the two, I'd rather have Cal Raleigh. He's got 10 home runs in 170 plate appearances. Mitch Garver's got 5 in 156 and is way below the Mendoza line, getting on at a 282 clip. But Raleigh's not exactly getting on. Both these guys are kind of home run or bust options. Raleigh's been the better of the two. The premium contact has been way better. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's not individually expensive. Makes it capable enough one-off at 4,300. Ty France, 31-26. Fairly skippable, does have 5 home runs in 173 plate appearances, but not really slashing where you're supposed to. Usually he's more hit tool focused. Higher average, much better on base usually out of him. He's a mix and match option at best. Jorge Polanco, most of his talent seems to have left the building. 5 home runs on the season is fine, but just a 116 ISO, 82 WRC plus. Any given slate power upside for sure, but the premium contact is dipped pretty significantly, striking out at a very high rate. Not a good option. Mitch Haniger has 6 home runs, just a 148 ISO, 89 WRC plus. Another player, without the significant dip in premium contact, hasn't really delivered a ton of quality this season, but another player with any given slate home run upside in this ballpark against a lefty, as a righty against a lefty, and in this Yankee Stadium that is pretty hitter friendly. Not a bad option if you're going to the bottom of the Mariners lineup, if you're building a bunch of Mariners stacks, but not ideal. Luis Urias, 2,800, 2,500, another player, just, very high strikeout, kind of meh overall, but does have a little bit of power, the ability to drive the ball. Cheap at third base at 2,800. I prefer him probably for 25 at second base, but very, very skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Bryce Miller's in play for the Mariners. 52 2/3. He's got a 25.1% strikeout rate, a 3.08 ERA with a 3.71 xFIP. So he's pitching basically exactly like he looks like he is on the surface. He does have issues with home runs and premium contact. That's going to potentially ding him against this Yankees squad. But Stuff Plus really likes the arsenal. He's got an 11.4% swinging strike rate. This is just like what I was saying yesterday with Woo. It wouldn't surprise me either way. It wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees put a few home runs into the seats and rack up 6 runs and chase Bryce Miller after 4 or 5 innings and he doesn't have a good start. It equally would not surprise me if Bryce Miller puts a minor ceiling on this median projection. I don't think we're going for a gigantic, 60-point FanDuel start, 10, 11 strikeouts or anything like that. But a solid 6-7 strikeout game, get through 6, get the quality start is definitely on the board for him. He's got the talent easily. But the 12.9% barrels is concerning. 46% hard hits against this Yankees team on a relative fly ball trajectory. Concerning. 91.7 miles an hour of exit velo against a team that most certainly knows how to generate exit velo is concerning. Yanks with the regular version of the lineup: Volpe, Soto, Judge, Verdugo, Stanton, Rizzo, Gleyber Torres, Austin Wells, Ozzy Cabrera. Starting from the bottom, Ozzy over 147 plate appearances. We've cooled to 248, 286, 372, just an 88 WRC plus. We're looking a lot more like the hitter that he actually is. He's a minor leaguer. He plays a few positions. He's a utility man. He'll be on the roster throughout the season with his ability to play multiple spots. But DJ LeMahieu is about to take his job away. Maybe one last little outburst from Ozzy as a wraparound option for cheap, but don't love him as your third baseman on DraftKings. Don't love him as just any other outfielder on FanDuel. Austin Wells is a very interesting hitter. 12.9% strikeouts, 14% walks. The ability to barrel the ball and generate hard hits as demonstrated last year. It's down so far this year in a limited number of batted ball events. Just one home run, just a 103 ISO, 84 WRC plus over 93. But an interesting left-handed catcher for very cheap pricing late in the lineup. At least a mix and match worthy of some consideration if you're building a bunch of Yankee stacks. Gleyber Torres hit his third home run yesterday. Monster shot, 223, 301, 310. Maybe signs of life from a player who desperately needs to show us some signs of life. He's gotten very, very cheap. He is playable, most particularly in Yankee stacks. Not a completely awful one-off option, though. If you're, you built a lineup that you like on both sides, you booked your pitchers, and now, I've only got 3,700 in second base as my one-off spot, 2,800 on FanDuel. Gleyber's not off the board, even with a slow start. He was very good last year. He's got a lot of talent. It's just been rough this year. Hits in a great lineup, though. If you're talking about opportunity to generate runs, the guys ahead of him, if they don't clear the bases ahead of him, there's definitely some ability to load up the bases ahead of him. So he's interesting enough. 4,400, 3,200. Rizzo is still cheap. He's got 7 home runs on the season. Pretty decent shot at one today. 7.74 in the home run model. The premium contact has been down so far this year. It was down last year in that rough season with the concussion last year. But he is a very good home run hitter from the left side over time. He doesn't strike out a lot. He puts a lot of balls in play. In this ballpark, that's really all he has to do on a day like today. Put a fly ball in the air toward those right field seats and hope for the best. So pretty significant home run upside, maybe underrepresented in the home run model right now for Anthony Rizzo. He's got 7 on the season, just a 139 ISO. But against a pitcher who's given up a lot of barrels and a lot of eggs of velo, that's kind of interesting. This guy hits more balls hard than anybody in the entire league. In terms of, like I said, he's got like 14 out of those 22 balls hit over 120 miles an hour since the start of the StatCast era. 19.8% barrels, 53.8% hard hits on the season, 11 home runs, 256 ISO, 128 WRC plus, hitting 250 even. 298 on base isn't great, but hitting 250 if you care about batting average. This is what I care about from Giancarlo Stanton. That and just the fact that he's in the lineup. When he's playing, he's going to hit home runs. He's also going to strike out. That's what his game is. He's also going to get booed by idiot Yankee fans who don't know a good player when they see one. He's totally playable, and he's too cheap at 4,900 on DraftKings in this matchup against a pitcher giving up that kind of premium contact. Giancarlo Stanton might strike out 3 times against Bryce Miller and put a 0 into your lineup. I'm not saying he won't, but I'm also not saying that he's not going to hit 2 home runs against Bryce Miller, given all that premium contact. Alex Verdugo, not much of a home run hitter, but a really interesting lefty bat who's been very effective in this cleanup spot, given the amount of times he puts the ball in play at just a 10.9% strikeout rate so far this year. Was low strikeout and lower walks last year. A lot of balls in play there as well. Does have the ability to draw a walk, sets the table pretty well, 111 WRC plus, and can poke one over that right field fence. 5 home runs on the season. These two guys are ridiculous, especially with Judge back to where he's supposed to be. Look how quickly Aaron Judge got back to 26.8% barrels, 60.6% hard hits, 13 home runs, a 306 ISO, a 174 WRC plus. Remember like 50 plate appearances ago when Aaron Judge was really struggling? Or 175 plate appearances ago? He's not anymore. He's back to being Aaron Judge, 6,200, 4,500, totally worth it. 6,400, 4,200, totally worth it for Soto. Another lefty in this lineup. These guys are absolute killers. Anthony Volpe's interesting at 4,800, 3,500. Getting on at a 341 clip is all we really need ahead of these two guys. These two guys also have absurd on-base percentages for all their power. 1, 2, 3, 5 is probably the 4-man priority on FanDuel, but any combination of those top 6 is pretty interesting on FanDuel. They're not all that expensive either. These guys, those prices are not crazy. On DraftKings, they're even less expensive. Kind of like the Yankee stack here. Again, Bryce Miller could go out, pitch 6 clean innings, give up no home runs, strike out 7 or 8, have a quality start, have a good score, and shut the Yankees down completely. Neither of those things would surprise me, but the Yanks are on the board. Yankees bats. Yeah, Yankees bats, Nestor, Bryce Miller, and then Mariners bats. Mariners bats only like moderately playable. They're very cheap. They do have home run upside. Maybe a little bit more than moderately playable. It's just they've been so rough this season, and there are some interesting contrarian options on the board. If Nestor gets popular, that would make the Mariners bats a little bit more interesting. White Sox, Blue Jays. The Chris Bassett train rolls on here against the White Sox. Never my favorite pitcher to have to recommend. Is talented overall. Typically pitches deep into ball games overall. Tends to burn me when I get overly enthusiastic about him, though. Not that that's really a reason to not consider him, of course. Zach DeLoach, not on the FanDuel slate, is on the DraftKings slate. Okay. Thank you to Allison with 2 L's for attempting to help me with our FanDuel issues this morning. FanDuel's salary page was not there when I went to get it this morning. Why is this not coming up? There it is. So we had to wait that out. But Allison was very friendly from the FanDuel customer support team. Couldn't give me an ETA on its return to action. Couldn't get me a copy of the spreadsheet, but tried her best. And now we just need to find out Zach DeLoach is left-handed. All right, there you go. Zach DeLoach is the dead minimum on DraftKings. He is not in the lineup on FanDuel. 3.56 in the home run model. I do not know anything about Zach DeLoach. Apologies, gang. Well, we can find out real quick. He's 25. He's never played in the majors. Not a great start. Was in AAA for the Mariners last season, over 623 plate appearances. He did have 23 home runs and 8 stolen bases, /286, 387, 481. Had a 111 WRC plus. Hit 14 home runs, stole 4 bases in 499 in AA for the same organization back in 2022. So far this year, in 159 plate appearances in AAA for Chicago, 2 home runs, 8 stolen bases, slashing .263, 358, 343. Below average WRC plus by 10 points, just a 90 WRC plus. Striking out at a 22.6% rate, just as a .080 ISO in AAA. Is the dead min against Chris Bassett? There's enough idea of maybe he gets a hold of one, or maybe he gets on and looks like he's got a little speed to steal a base. You do have Martin Maldonado, so you get really, really cheap if you want to go with the White Sox. They've been popping up some in people's lineups as like they're always really cheap. They're always they're always low owned. But a lot of that is because they're just bad. I know you see them from time to time in lineups toward the top of a tournament. If you're looking early, if you're looking at the end of the night, how many times have the White Sox really gotten there? I don't think it's very many. Paul DeJong leads the lineup, the current confirmed version of the lineup, with 7 home runs, a 211 ISO, a 115 WRC plus. He's been a revelation for them over 143 plate appearances. Who would have thought Paul DeJong would be a cleanup hitter this year? But there he is. He's shown power over time. He's got a great premium contact profile right now. Strikes out a ton, 35.7% strikeout rate, 4.2% walks. Overall, I don't expect him to continue having an above average WRC plus. He might maintain a 200 plus ISO. He might hit 20 plus home runs on the season, but he's no killer option. No Eloy Jimenez in the lineup, by the way, for the White Sox. Just noticing that. So that's pretty bad. Their best player. Nicky Lopez in the 2 spot. We looked at Nicky in the those new StatCast bat on ball numbers. Makes frequent contact. 14.9% strikeouts, 7.1% walks. No real ability to drive the ball. Doesn't really turn in good results for the contact that he makes. Demonstrates good bat control, but little else. Not much results. Just 214, 277, 230. Pretty skippable from the number 2 spot. Tommy Pham, 4,200, 3,100. He's been really good. 308, 351, 440. Part of keeping this team afloat on the games where they do produce anything. 126 WRC plus, 2 homers, 3 steals in 97 plate appearances. Probably the best player in this lineup, with no Eloy, no Eloy Jimenez, no Luis Robert, who is starting his rehab assignment finally. Andrew Benintendi underperforming his moderate talent at 190, 218, 276. If he's not hitting for average, he's worthless. Dominic Fletcher, 2,100, 2,200 is very cheap. He's slashing 203, 288, 271 over 67 plate appearances. Zach Remillard, light hitting infielder for 24, 22. That DeLoach guy and Martin Maldonado. It's a bad White Sox lineup. All of that is to support the upside for Chris Bassett, who has a 21.2% strikeout rate on the season with a 5.03 ERA and a 4.2 xFIP. He's walking too many at 10.8%. He's got an atrocious 1.53 whip, a bad 7.2% swinging strike rate, a low 26.1% CSW, giving up too much premium contact, giving up not that many home runs, but not too few home runs either. Stuff plus a couple points below league average. He's just very, very cheap at 7,200 against this White Sox team. 8,400 on FanDuel. He's definitely playable. He's got the ability to book a quality start in this spot. He typically does give you 6 innings and a lot of starts unless things go really bad. 5 2/3 in the most recent one. Struck out 5, walked 3, gave up a homer and 3 earned runs on 5 hits to the Rays. Went 6 1/3 against the Phillies at Philadelphia. Struck out 6, just 2 earned runs, walked 2, 3 hitter. 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeout game against the Royals. Messy game. Gave up 7 runs in 2 2/3 against the Dodgers. That's part of that ugly ERA. But a guy that we know pitches deep into games. He's pitched in the 7th inning 3 times this year. He's completed the 6th 4 times. Pitched into the 6th another couple times. So definitely against this squad, the ability to book the quality start is pretty clear. He can find additional strikeouts against a team with a current year 24.4% strikeout rate, though some of that is skewed by some low plate appearance numbers. Same group of hitters last year, 23.4. Bassett could have a 6-7 strikeout game. 8 is not out of the question. Could easily get you 7 innings here. Book some clean innings for these prices. It's really all you need. The strikeouts are gravy from there. It's just, he's not overly reliable. In years past, 3.60 ERA with a 4.21 xFIP, 22.5% strikeouts. You can see 200 innings exactly in 33 starts last year. 30 starts, 181 2/3 the year before, was at a 22.4% strikeout rate. Had a 3.42 ERA and a 3.72 xFIP. This is not far off the mark in terms of how he's pitching this year. So it's the typical version of Chris Bassett against one of the worst teams in baseball. I think you can get there. I think you probably should get there. It's probably going to be pretty popular. Nick Nastrini on the other side, 5,500, 6,500. Third start of the year. First one he faced Kansas City back on April 15th. Went 5, struck out 5, walked 2, gave up a homer, 2 earned runs, and 3 hits. Second game at Philadelphia just lasted 3 innings, struck out 3, walked 5, 5 earned runs on 6 hits. And has not pitched since the 21st. Don't think we're getting much out of Nick Nastrini here. Don't really want to tangle with the Blue Jays when they're quality enough for limiting strikeouts overall. They've got some power. They've got a couple guys maybe coming around a little bit. And they're drawing a 5.21 implied total to lead the slate. Nope. 5.22 for the Phillies if we round up. Tied for the lead. Call it a tie without rounding up. I think I'd much rather have some Blue Jays bats here. Everybody's cheap on both sites. Nobody over 5,000 on DraftKings is very appealing for a team with that kind of a run total on this kind of a slate. Nobody over 3,100 on FanDuel, or 3,200, over on FanDuel. That's very, very appealing. This team has let us down a bunch of times. They're like the new version of the Cardinals. They're the American League Cardinals. There's a lot of good players in this lineup. There's a lot of guys who have been good over time. That are just kind of scuffling, kind of disappointing us, kind of not doing what they're supposed to do while still maybe producing Vlad Guerrero. 12.2% barrels, 58.3% hard hits for Vladdy. Only 4 home runs, just a 106 ISO. That's an absurd combination of contact profile and power output. 123 WRC plus though, getting on at a 374 clip, hitting 279, 4 home runs. Totally capable of a monster turnaround. 19.4% strikeouts is up a little bit year over year. 12.6% walks is as well. For 4,900, 3,200, Vladdy is a monster bargain for his talent. Davis Schneider in the leadoff spot. He's been pretty effective for them. 5 home runs, 2 steals, a 212 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Dalton Varsho in the second spot. Neither one of these guys is overly consistent, but Dalton Varsho's also got a 200 plus ISO. He's at 8 home runs on the season, stolen 5 bases, kind of gotten back to being a at least semi-effective player. Lefty bat, interestingly enough, against Nick Nastrini here, given the power upside, given the 8% better than average run creation, a 6.04 in the home run model. Playable part. Bo Bichette, still really underperforming also. 101 ISO for him, 77 WRC+. Plus. Nowhere near the justification for Bo Bichette right now that we have for Vladdy for continuing to go there, outside of some previous season performance and a lot of faith that we eventually get back to this level. Last year, over 601, Bo Bichette was a 306, 339, 475 hitter, created runs 25% better than average, and hit 20 home runs. Year before, he hit 24 and stole 13 bases in 697 plate appearances, created runs 29% better than average. That player is not gone. He's still in there somewhere. A lot of rumors coming out that if the Blue Jays decide to sell, these two guys are going to be on the block, which would be very, very interesting. Justin Turner at 44. They'd probably both just go to the Dodgers somehow. Justin Turner, 44-28, both corners on FanDuel, just third base on DraftKings. No positional conflict, no worries about playing him. Has cooled after a very hot start. He's down to 227, 293, 376. Really scuffling now. 4 home runs, 92 WRC+. Plus. At one point, he was the only good thing in this lineup. Now he's not doing really well at all. Kevin Biggio for 32-23, 4 positions on FanDuel. No real output from him. He started the season out looking okay over, call it 50 some odd plate appearances. Now he's down to an 82 WRC+, plus, a terrible triple slash, just 1 homer, 1 steal, and 108. So not good. Alejandro Kirk, I prefer Danny Jansen. Kevin Kiermaier, he's here for defense. So is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So it's a really short lineup. Maybe that's the issue with this Blue Jays squad. It's what makes them a little bit difficult to trust to get out to that run total, even against this pitcher. Even against the White Sox pen. Do I think they get there for us? Yeah, I do. If I had to decide, do you go Blue Jays, do you not? And I do. You have to go to them. Or you don't have to. But I have to say that you should go to them. It's just a little bit shaky, given these guys at the bottom, given the underperformance, the weird performance. I'd rather have the Yankees facing this pitcher. How about we put it that way? Chris Bassett's a yes, for sure. 8,400 is a good price on FanDuel. 7,200 is a great price on DraftKings. Nick Nastrini is a definite no for me. I don't think you get any kind of depth. And the Blue Jays are talented but underperforming. They're definitely stackable against. White Sox, not a great option. You need Bassett to be off his game to get anything out of them. And they're very, very low end. They're cheap. They're going to be low owned as usual. 5:30 last game on the FanDuel slate, the Braves and the Cubbies. Justin Steele as our pal XX Cubs fan, Dennis Forgy, as you know him in the YouTube chat here, pointed out. Steele threw 88 pitches in the last one. Carlos Soto, thoughts on the Panthers-Rangers series? Rangers are going to win. It's going to be a tough matchup. Panthers are really good, but I think my Rangers get there. Knocking firmly on wood on that one. Definitely need some output from my Rangers on the power play. Power play wasn't great in the last series against the Canes. Scored a bunch of shorthanded goals in that series, oddly. But, yeah, I like the Rangers there. I like my boys to make a run. Make a run for the cup. Defense is good. Power play is elite. Goaltending is elite. A lot of good 5-on-5 players. Love the physicality out of the Rangers this season. But, again, the Panthers are very, very good. It's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that series goes 7. All right, so let's get into this one. So Steele threw 88 pitches in his most recent performance. Went 5 2/3 in that one. After a couple of shorter starts, went just 4 against the Pirates. The start before that went just 4 2/3 on May 6th against the Padres, and had not pitched in before that game since March 28th. Wasn't good, really, in the 2 most recent starts, both against the Pirates. At Pittsburgh, he gave up 3 home runs, struck out just 3, walked 2. He gave up another 2 home runs and 4 earned runs total on 6 hits in the 5 2/3 in the most recent one. But the upside is he did have 7 strikeouts in that game. So hopefully we're rounding into form for Justin Steele. 5.21 ERA, not good. 3.96 xFIP, perfectly fine. 43.1% hard hits is too high. 90 miles an hour of exit velo is too high. And obviously the wonky home run output is weird, but that is not who he is. Typically, he's keeping the ball to a reasonable launch angle, doesn't give up a lot of barrels, doesn't give up a ton of hard hits, doesn't give up a ton of exit velo. These are fair samples. 30 starts last year, 24 starts the year before. A 1.56% home run rate on 33.3% hard hits in 2022, 1.96 last year and 36.6% hard hits. Justin Steele's a really talented pitcher. He also had a 24.6% strikeout rate last year with 11.6% swinging. Same matching strikeout rate the year before on 10.1% swinging. So as long as we're getting our 6 innings now, as long as we're getting a full complement of pitches, it's just the fact that he's facing the Braves that really limits him. Not ideal there, but he's talented enough to get through, and he's also talented enough and keeps the ball down enough historically that the Braves are not showing their usually, elite, even with their struggles this year, power numbers. So I think Steele's on the board, considering that the sites only put him at 7,000, 7,500. Projects out well enough and does have a little bit of ceiling beyond this, even against the Braves. It's a spot that wouldn't shock me at all, though, if the Braves came out, hit 2 home runs, put 5-6 runs on him, and chased him early. So it's definitely a both-sider. Max Fried, 19% strikeouts on the season, a 3.81 ERA, 3.64 xFIP, pitching around his usual levels, keeping the ball down significantly at 1.6 degrees average launch. The year before it was 4.8. Year before that, 7.6. Limits barrels very effectively, limits hard hits very, very effectively, and exit velo very effectively. So he's always good at keeping the ball in the yard. Occasional blips. He had a 2 home run game against the Dodgers, but went 7, struck out 7, 4 earned runs on 4 hits. That's not a terrible start for a game where you give up 2 home runs. Only 2 home runs across the rest of the season in all of his other starts put together across 9 starts. So has been pitching effectively in terms of limiting power. He's walking a few too many, 9.8% walks and just 19% strikeouts. It's a big dip from the strikeouts that we saw last year. It's an increase in the walk rate. Year before, it's a smaller dip, but he was definitely better in these 2 seasons for strikeouts, for limiting walks, for limiting runs. But as he rounds into form, 9,000, 8,600, it's just a quality Cubs team on the other side that maybe limits the appeal. I think he's got a ceiling beyond the median projections as well for the money. I could easily see Max pitching 6 clean, getting me the quality start bonus. So he's firmly on the board. Went 7 in each of the 2 starts before a 4 and a third inning start in his most recent one. Was limited in that one. Just 3 earned runs, 9 hits, 2 strikeouts, 3 walks. But the 2 starts before that, 7 innings in both of them. One of them was that Dodgers game with the 2 home runs. Went 6 in the start against Seattle before that Dodgers game. Had 7 strikeouts in that game. The awesome complete game shutout against Miami. 3-hitter. Went 9, faced 29 hitters, struck out 6. No runs, no walks. So has the ability to pitch elite games. It's just the Cubs pretty good. Good at getting on base. Got some good power hitters. Got some hitters who specialize in hitting homers against lefties. It's just, I don't know that they have that upside today, given Fried's ability when he's going right to keep the ball in the yard. I think we've got these lineups. Let me see. Yeah. Appreciate your time today, you guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done that. There continues to be information about kicking back down in the description of this video. PayPal, Venmo, CashApp, all those different things. If you want to send something in, it's always appreciated. Anything that you send now will be applied to any kind of subscriptions that get set up in the next little bit at the website. Right now, everything is free up on the site. Projections, home run picks, pitching projections, top stacks, all of that good stuff. Also, check out our pals over at acemind.io. Sims, optimizers. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over at acemind.io. And moving forward with the Braves lineup, Ronnie Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna, still no Riley at third base. It's been problematic. They probably should have just put him on the IL at this point. He's missed all of last week and now half of this week. I do think you can grab some Braves here. But again, Steele over time has been good at limiting home runs. So I think they're a little bit under where they typically would be. Acuna at 6,000, 3,900 continues to be very fairly priced on FanDuel, continues to be accurately priced on DraftKings, if not a little bit cheap. 108 WRC plus, 15 steals, 3 home runs. It's been a little bit messy for Acuna, hasn't been performing like Acuna. Too many strikeouts, I think, are part of the problem, like we saw yesterday. 53.36 for Ozzie Albies. He's also been a little bit underwhelming. 124 ISO, 107 WRC plus. Both players, it's worth noting, still above average for run creation. The barrels are down, the hard hits are down for Ozzie, but a tremendous player, still not striking out much. I like him to turn things around pretty quickly and find his usual power upside. Ozuna's got 14 home runs, a 307 ISO. He's been tremendous. 5,500 is very fair on DraftKings. 4,100 on FanDuel is not incorrect. Olsen, tremendous upside for home runs. 6 home runs on the season. Lefty typically doesn't hurt him, but against a lefty that does have a lot of ability to keep the ball in the park, maybe not an ideal Matt Olson day, but you can see still a 7.93 in the home run model, which does account for lefty-righty. Travis d'Arnaud didn't get us our home run yesterday, but has that upside on any given slate, given his premium contact skills. Just 3,900, 3,000, definitely in the mix for shares from the 5 spot. 227 ISO, 135 WRC plus for him. Arcia, Harris, Duvall, and Zach Short, all kind of underperforming. 90, 89, 80, and 62 marks for WRC plus. Any of the first 3 guys, Arcia, Harris, and Duvall, can hit home runs. Arcia and Harris just did yesterday. They both got their 5th home run of the year yesterday. Duvall has tremendous upside for home run power. But it is, again, a lefty who doesn't give up a ton of home runs when he's going right. They're all very cheap for their talent. FanDuel in the 29s and 26s, not bad on DraftKings. Harris, that's a reasonable price for Michael Harris's skill on DraftKings. That's not far off the mark. It's cheap when he's going right, and it's not far off the mark for the current performance. So Braves are stackable, but the Cubs stackable, but you get the same results, the limited upside for home run power that Max Fried's going to yield. The fact that Max Fried, typically when he's going right, is a very good pitcher at limiting runs, limiting output. So you're relying on some station-to-station baseball, which the Cubs are good at doing. Nico's in play, 4,000, 3,000 across sites. Still just 5 stolen bases, 357 on base. Just needs to continue to lead off and get on base, and the stolen bases will come. Still creating runs above average, 16% above average over 185 plate appearances. Definitely an option. Seiya Suzuki hits the ball very, very hard. He's got 4 home runs on the season, a 179 ISO. Kind of underperforming output-wise in terms of power for this kind of a contact profile, but definitely some upside for 34-48. It's just, again, Max Fried, very difficult to hit home runs against. Cody Bellinger, 5,000, 3,300, has 7 homers on the season at 219 ISO. Chris Morel has 9 homers from the right side. Bellinger's a lefty. Lefty against a lefty who limits home runs is not ideal for a lefty who hits home runs. But Morel and Wisdom as righties may be a better shot at some home run upside. But again, it's just very limited. Morel's got 9 on the season. Wisdom has 2, 275 ISO, 195 ISO in reverse order there. Dansby Swanson, another right-handed home run hitter, just 4 on the season, 4 stolen bases, a 135 ISO. Dramatically underperforming his talent so far, but I like him still to round things into form. Same with Ian Happ. 2 homers, he's a switch hitter. 207, 319, 305, just an 87 WRC plus. Just a 319 on base. Very uncharacteristic performances so far from those 2. But as things move along, I think they both get where they need to be. Nick Madrigal and Miguel Amaya are fairly skippable from the bottom of the lineup. Pretty limited output so far this year from those 2 and over seasons past. So probably goes Max Fried, Justin Steele, Braves bats, and then Cubbies bats are a little bit shaky today. They would need multiple home run output from a couple of these guys down here, and I don't know that they get it. That's your FanDuel slate. Plowing ahead with DraftKings. Stop me when I start saying how these guys look on FanDuel. We should pick up some time here. Let's see. We got the Rockies lineup in. So Mitch Spence costs just 4,000 on this DraftKings slate. 30 innings, 1 actual start. He went 4 2/3 in that one, struck out 4. That was against the Royals, gave up 1 earned run, walked 1, 5 hits. A couple of traditional relief appearances over the start of May. A 4 2/3 inning bulk relief appearance against the Marlins in which he was not good. 5 strikeouts and 1 walk, but gave up 4 earned runs on 6 hits in 4 2/3. A couple of 3 inning bulk relief appearances before that, 2 strikeouts apiece. Was clean for runs, only gave up 1 hit across the 6 innings. That was against the Pirates and at Baltimore. Had a 3 inning bulk relief appearance back on April 16th against St. Louis. Struck out 5, walked 1. Gave up just 1 hit to 10 hitters. 5 innings against the Rockies. Is it completely crazy to think that this guy couldn't succeed for 4,000? He projects out okay. Over 30 innings combined between bulk relief, regular relief, and the one start. He's got a 21.8% strikeout rate. Hasn't been bad for home runs. Stuff Plus has him above average. He's generated a 13.5% swinging strike rate. 3.90 ERA with a 3.39 xFIP. He is on the board for the dead men for 4,000 on DraftKings. That is not a crazy option. Full slate wise, he ranks out just here. You know, keep in mind what he is and who he is. But given the matchup against the Rockies, say it with me. Rockies, righty, road. It's appealing. It's mostly about the price rather than the talent. If he was, say, 7,500, even 6,800 where Austin Gomber is, he'd be less interesting. You do need him to complete that 5th inning. But the fact that he went 4 2/3 and was pitching well in that Kansas City game and then had the 4 2/3 against Miami even when he wasn't pitching well, I don't know where those runs came in that performance. But the fact that we can get into 5 innings gives me some faith that he can complete the 5th against this team. Maybe find his way to a win. Certainly the Athletics against Austin Gomber have the ability to win this game. They're showing a little bit more power. You can see Spence limiting power upside. It's a very small sample. We have no previous history. But he's not off the board for that price. That's not completely crazy. On that late slate on FanDuel at 55, I don't think he's out of the question in there either. Buys you a bunch of bats, but everybody's cheap on that outside of Glass now, who's probably going to just dominate the slate. Austin Gomber for 68. Not all that appealing. Has made a few good starts in a row, though, like I said at the top of the show. Last 3 starts, 6 innings against the Padres, no runs, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, 1 home run allowed, just a solo shot. 1 earned run on a home run. Gave up 2 total runs on 5 hits in 6 2/3 against Texas. So that's 2 good teams that he was good against over his last 2. Against the Pirates at Pittsburgh, he gave up 6 shutout innings. Struck out just 3, gave up 4 hits, walked 2, but clean. 4 runs over 7 innings against Houston on 6 hits. Only struck out 2 in that one, gave up 3 home runs. There's your problem. 5 innings, 5 1/3 against San Diego and Philly earlier in the season. Wasn't terrible. Gave up some earned runs, but wasn't awful. Just a low strikeout pitcher overall. 50 2/3, 16.9% strikeouts. Not good. 76.62 Stuff Plus rating for the full arsenal. Very not good. 3.02 ERA is pretty good. 4.44 xFIP is probably the honest number. Hasn't been tragic for home runs, but has certainly given up a few. I prefer the Athletics side of the equation, but on a DraftKings slate where 6,800 plays for value, maybe he's in the mix. 8,300 on that short slate on FanDuel, maybe he's in the mix in the 2-gamer, but not ideal. I would much rather take a few shots with some Athletics bats. Brent Rooker above the magic number for home run upside. Shea Langoliers a little bit below it. Zach Geloff a little bit below that. Nevin, not uninteresting. Abraham Toro, not uninteresting for 2,800, for 4,000 with dual position eligibility. Rooker's cheap for his power upside at 4,500. He's got 11 home runs this season, 295 ISO, against a pitcher giving up 9.7% barrels and a decent number of home runs. So this group is not bad. J.D. Davis hits a lot against lefties, makes excellent premium contact when he's going right, does have a lot of strikeouts. There are some strikeouts here for Gomber to find, but he's got to be on his game, and he's not really a strikeout pitcher. I'd rather take the shots with these righty bats for power against the lefty who's going to give up so much contact and also put some guys on base and allow them to drive some in. If you're going to the Rockies, off the top, Charlie Blackmon has been mediocre at best, not even. 225, 299 on the front end, not really hitting for average, not getting on base enough, and there's really not much power left in Charlie Blackmon. So fairly skippable outside of the spot in the lineup. Ezekiel Tovar for 39.29, playable. He's got 7 home runs, 4 steals, a 189 ISO, 105 WRC+. Ryan McMahon continuing a hot start, hit his 8th home run last night, 192 ISO, 135 WRC+, very good triple slash. Still cheap, 4,600, 3,100. I have no issues with one-offing Ryan McMahon on either the full DraftKings slate or on that short 2-game FanDuel slate. Elias Diaz, 4,200 on DraftKings where you need catchers. Playable. 312, 353, 433, giving you a good triple slash. Not a ton of counting stat output. 3 home runs on the season. No steals, obviously. 121 ISO, but creating runs 8% better than average. Brendan Rodgers for 3,200 is mix and match part at best. Does have an interesting 45.8% hard hit rate, but it's only amounted to 1 home run and a .076 ISO. Chris Bryant's missed a lot of games, 59 plate appearances so far. I do continue to think that somewhere in there he's not dead. I do think we see Chris Bryant come back to life if he manages to stay healthy. 4,300 for that upside is somewhat interesting. Brenton, if you're going to this team. Brenton Doyle for 38 has produced 5 home runs, 9 steals, some decent counting stats, a positive WRC+. Jordan Beck, their rookie, they like him. He hasn't shown us much yet, but does have 2 home runs, 2 steals, but just a 39 WRC+ and a 212 on base. Hunter Goodman does have a lot of power, at least based on his minor league track record. 2 home runs so far, a 250 ISO, and 31 plate appearances in the show this year. Getting a shot at 3,400. Not a bad option if you're going to this team. For the athletic side, as I was just saying, this trio for power upside for sure. If I'm going to this team, I definitely want at least 2 of those hitters. Probably all 3 in a full stack. Zach Geloff would be a pretty high priority at 4,300 at second base if I'm going to this team. That's an interesting enough second baseman that you could definitely mix him in, given all the contact that Gomber's going to allow. Over 127 plate appearances, he hasn't been good. 3 home runs, 4 steals, but is a talented kid. Abraham Toro from the top, 4,000. Second base and third base, 294, 344, 459 so far. 5 home runs, creating runs 34% better than average. Definitely interesting. Low strikeout, low walk, a lot of balls in play, especially just getting on base ahead of these guys if they're going to hit for power here. That's what we're looking for from Toro, but he's been providing even more than that, so he's interesting. Tyler Nevin, 4 home runs, a 127 ISO, dead league average on for WRC+, over 134 plate appearances. 3,300 first base and outfield. I'd probably stick him in the outfield and take a better first baseman. Kind of just any given, just another outfielder at that price. Schumann, 2,900 on at shortstop, 2 homers, 2 steals. You get 3 homers out of over 51 plate appearances from a cheap Brett Harris at the bottom of the lineup. And then Esteury Ruiz, scuffling right now, 2 homers, 5 steals. They kind of wasted his hot start in AAA, and then he hasn't really been great, but not getting any kind of regular opportunity. If he's in the lineup, he's always playable just based on the skill set, but it hasn't been great, and he's just been mismanaged right now. Mitch Spence from the bargain bin at 4,000 is probably the top option here. Mitch Spence at 4,000, then A's bats, then Austin Gomber, then Rockies bats if you got to rank it out. Last game up. No lineups for this one yet, doesn't look like. This guy, very, very good. This guy, not all that good. Problem solved on the pitching, right? Tyler Glasnow, top of the board overall for the full slate, up and down. 10-6 on DraftKings, 11,000 on FanDuel if you're playing the late slate. He's a no-brainer option compared to these other guys on the late FanDuel slate. That said, if you went with the Mitch Spence route at 55, you're saving a significant amount of money. That buys you the best hitter in baseball plus another bat upgrade. It's not completely crazy to go this route. Hope that the Diamondbacks just hang a few runs on Glasnow. They don't need to blow him up at that price. Limit strikeouts and put 2 or 3 runs on them, and that will ruin the day for Tyler Glasnow. If you get anything at all out of these value guys and you land on the right bats, you're off and running on that 2-game FanDuel slate. And then again, Spence for 4,000 on DraftKings is kind of interesting. That's the most interesting $4,000 pitcher I think we've had this season. I'm not saying Mitch Spence is good. I don't even know if he gives you 5 innings. But given what he's done so far, he's been effective. That's not crazy. Going up against one of the worst lineups in baseball on the road. So all that is to say, Tyler Glasnow is excellent. 62 innings in 10 starts, 33.8% strikeout rate. Stuff Plus loves him. Why wouldn't they? 2.90 ERA with an even better xFIP, a .90 whip, a killer 13.3% swinging strike rate, limiting power, limiting premium contact, going up against a very gettable Diamondbacks lineup. The thing the Diamondbacks might do is exactly what I was just saying they could do to him, though, in this situation. They're not a super high strikeout bunch. 19.7 exactly the last 2 years. Look how consistent these guys are. 19.7 and a 9.1% walk rate this year, 19.7 and a 9.0% walk rate last year. Performing exactly like they're supposed to in terms of strikeout and walk rate. The averages are down a little bit. Most particularly, Corbin Carroll continues to just suck at the top of the lineup, over 206 plate appearances. The first round in-season long pick this year, 191, 277, 273. Burnt a lot of people across the country. 2 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 62 WRC+. With that kind of start, if you took him in the first round in season long, forget it. There's no way he reclaims that value for you. Fortunately, in DFS, he can reclaim that value for us almost immediately. Just have a good day and continue having good days from here forward, and we're fine. So Corbin Carroll's never going to be off the board, especially as long as he continues to lead off. 4,500, 2,900. Still looks playable against Glasnow. Still not striking out a ton. Exact same number as last year, 19.4%. Just we've lost our hard hits, we've lost our barrels, we've lost our upside. But again, I think we can get back to it. Just not a great spot to do it, obviously, against this pitcher. Ketel Marte, 5,000, 3,400, has 9 home runs on the season, 222 ISO, 135 WRC+. Tremendous option at second base. He's actually striking out a little bit more than last season so far, but he's making better premium contact. So I'll trade 3 points of strikeout rate for this kind of an upgrade in premium contact. I really like Ketel Marte. Jock Peterson, tons of premium contact, consistent with previous seasons. High strikeout rate, but draws walks. Very productive so far this year. 6 home runs on the season. We talked about him yesterday in terms of pinch hit risk. I'm not going to sweat it. If you're going to Diamondbacks, Jock Peterson is part of the discussion. 4,200, 2,600. Price is not where it needs to be. That's a very good lefty power hitter. Christian Walker, 4,800, 3,200, has 9 home runs. Strikeouts are still up a little bit, but the walks are up as well. Premium contact in terms of barrels is where it needs to be. Hard hits are up. Lot to like about Christian Walker, despite a little bit of underperformance in terms of actual home run output and ISO. 9 home runs and 211 plate appearances is not bad, though. Lourdes Gurriel's been problematic. After a hot start, he's down to 242, 288, 387. 8 points below average for run creation, but is a very good player who only costs 44.28 now. Definitely playable in stacks. Jake McCarthy, the ability to get on base, hit for average, steal some bases. He's even hit 2 home runs. Not a bad option. 119 WRC+. He's very, very cheap if you're going to this team. Eugenio Suarez has not been good. 3,800, 2,700, justifiably pretty cheap. When you consider what he's done in years past for home run upside and why this team went and got him in the offseason, that's a cheap price for that player. It's just he hasn't been that guy this year. You can see the massive dip in premium contact. Lost half his barrels. Lost a pretty big chunk of hard hits so far. Still striking out a ton. Not drawing as many walks as he has in years past. He's very cheap. Gabriel Moreno hasn't really delivered on his upside. I do think there's a talented player there, but we haven't seen much over 135 plate appearances this year. Had a good playoffs last year. Had an okay overall season. 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases, but slash 284, 339, 408. I would take just the triple slash from this catcher in this lineup, but has been underperforming for sure. Kevin Newman, an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup. And the Dodgers going up against Ryan Nelson. They are your 3rd highest implied total of the day at 5.11. Absolute crush spot on the DraftKings slate. Late night hammer, whatever you want to call it. Definitely an interesting spot on DraftKings. Definitely going to be super popular in the 2-gamer on FanDuel where you can afford it. They're easy to get to. If you talked about the idea of putting them together with Mitch Spence for going the Glasnow shares, then you can get to your Dodgers. It's probably the same approach on DraftKings. If you want to build out a full Dodgers stack, you're probably foregoing Tyler Glasnow. You're probably foregoing some other high-end pitchers from the top of the board. But there are options, right? He's going to be very popular among lineups that include the Dodgers. Pepio might draw some shares in those lineups. Blake Snell probably draws some shares at 8,300 in those lineups. Lusardo is pretty interesting for those. But that one stands out for like, how am I going to pay for Dodgers? That's how. So that's going to be a popular combo. Something to think about in terms of gaining leverage, getting different. When we talk about that, I always try and avoid, or I always try and point out, it's not really about the individual so much as about how frequently are those factors put together. How frequently is Bassett the guy that the public is using to unlock Dodgers specifically, or unlock any of the other high-end teams? So it's just about managing those combos and your exposure to the combinations. That said, with the ability from some of the bottom-end hitters in the Dodgers lineup at low ownership and low pricing, with the skill sets down here, you can mix and match your way through unique shares, even using Chris Bassett with these Dodgers. So I'm not saying don't use that combination. I'm just saying, maybe think about getting a little bit different, a little bit mix and matchy. Maybe you don't just like straight line it. That would be a way to do it. 1-2. Spend 11-2 on Bassett and Mitch Spence. Hope for the best on DK, and then load up on bats. It's probably how I would take it. And then I'd be kicking myself for not rostering one of the high-end pitchers. When Freddie Peralta goes out and puts up a monster day against Miami, you're going to want to have it. But it's an interesting approach to paying for a ton of bats if you rostered Bassett and Spence for that price. Almost the same price as Glasnow. Mookie Betts, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, if that's the top four, they're all superstars. They belong in as many Dodger stacks as you can put them in. Any one of those guys is a worthwhile one-off. Will Smith at 5,200 is a very interesting DraftKings one-off on basically any slate. He's one of the best hitting catchers in baseball, and he's got arguably the best lineup spot behind all those superstars out of any catcher in baseball, even with guys who hit higher than him considered. Teoscar Hernandez has 11 home runs on the season, a 216 ISO, a 118 WRC+. Tons and tons of output for power from him. A lot of strikeouts, but a ton of ability. Gavin Lux, Andy Paez, Jason Hayward, Enrique Hernandez, whoever's at the bottom of this lineup is very, very playable. They help average down the pricing of the other guys. Lux, Hayward, and Hernandez have not really performed so far this season. The two lefties, Lux and Hayward, are interesting against this righty. They both have a lot more skill than they've shown right now. They both have power. They both have a little bit of speed. So I work both of those guys into stacks of the Dodgers. Then Andy Paez at 4,000 has hit 5 home runs in 131 plate appearances. He's absolutely delivering on what he's supposed to be. He's a power bat, and he's definitely delivering on that so far. So very interesting for just 4,000 from late in the lineup. Enrique Hernandez for 3,000. He's a utility man. He's maybe a little bit past his prime, but capable of contributing on any given slate. 6 o'clock, 40 minutes till lock. Glasnow, top of the board on the DraftKings slate. Top overall pitcher on the two-game FanDuel slate later in the evening. Your main slate, Freddie Peralta on FanDuel, is your top option at 10,000. I like that quite a bit. A little bit of a gap between him and Jared Jones. Better matchup for Freddie. Jared Jones showing a little bit of power against San Francisco, but he's very, very good and could come away with a 10 strikeout game and a monster score in that matchup. Either one of those guys is easily playable from high pricing on the DraftKings slate. These three guys are potentially elite on DraftKings. Everybody else comes with at least a little bit of questions or a little bit of like, you're not always good. Nestor Cortez, not always good. Great matchup against Seattle. Overall, pitching pretty well this season. Chris Bassett, definitely not always good, but gives you a lot of depth fairly reliably. Has been mostly pitching fairly well this season. One of the best matchups in baseball at a very, very cheap price on both sites. Like it. Ryan Pepio, questions about the depth. Blake Snell, questions about the depth. Not totally sure what we're getting out of those guys. I think they're both playable considering where they're priced, but I don't really love the ceiling for either player. I think either one of them could spike a little bit higher than these median projections, which puts them in play if you land on exactly the right bats. But they don't give you that leeway to be like, all right, I landed on 3 out of the 4 guys I needed from that stack, and then another guy had a double and scored a run, but it wasn't elite. It doesn't give you that little wiggle room there, given their little minor lack of ceiling. Jesus Luzardo is kind of interesting, especially on DraftKings at 78. That is a player that has some ceiling from that price. 94 is just correct on FanDuel. Has a little bit of ceiling, but that just puts him in the mix with these guys on FanDuel. Definitely playable across 150. Probably not my first selection in 1 lineup, 3 lineups, 10 lineups. Brian Bayo, playable, 8,700, 8,000. There's enough upside there against the scuffling Rays team. Just needs to keep the ball in the yard. Get through 6. Find me a few strikeouts along the way. It's not bad. Michael King, don't love the ballpark. Don't love the up and down performances. Definitely think he could spike an upside game on any given slate against the Cincinnati team. If you roll this 100 times, it's probably 55-45 that you want Reds bats 55 and King 45. Something like that in terms of the actual results. It's a close matchup on either side, but I like the Reds bats. I would play King at either one of these prices. Prefer him on DraftKings for 88, of course. Bryce Miller could have a day against the Yankees, but the Yankees could have a day against Bryce Miller, especially considering all the premium contact that he's given up. Several of those Yankees home run hitters are very interesting. Justin Steele, for the price, definitely in play against the Braves. Went 88 pitches in the last start. Just needs to get through clean innings. That's not a bad price for Justin Steele's talent level, even against the Braves. So he's in play. I wouldn't necessarily shy away from him on FanDuel at 75. I just question if we get to that quality start. And obviously there's a lot of threat against. But he's not uninteresting. 7,000 on DraftKings just works. Freed on the other side of that game, kind of correctly priced, but very capable of limiting that Cubs team. Dane Dunning, another player coming back from injury. It was a shoulder for Dunning. Definitely out of play on FanDuel. 71 on DraftKings. You're just dice rolling there. It's against a really good Phillies lineup. I don't really see why you would want to do it considering the other options. But he is there. I think you get 5. I don't think you get 6. Spence, 4,000 on DraftKings. I kind of like it. I really got to say, I think if I was playing on DraftKings, like I said a minute ago, I'd be looking at this combo pretty hard and just try and win it with bats. Hope that these guys don't completely go off. I need a few runs each from the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, and the Giants to make that work. They don't have to crush those pitchers, but limit the strikeouts a little bit. Get me a few runs to whittle away a couple strikeouts, and I'll see if I can win it with bats with those two pitchers priced where they are. That is interesting. 5,500 for Spence as an alternative to Glasnow. Give me 5,500 for Spence against Colorado. I need my 5 innings even on FanDuel on that 2-gamer, and maybe you can make up the difference. It's very tight there, though. That is not a great option. Probably better off going to Austin Gomber if you're playing that FanDuel slate. On DraftKings, I'd probably rather have the $4,000 Mitch Spence, save $2,800 for a similar option. Nick Nastrini is a pretty firm no. 55. He's in the bargain bin if you want him. That is a pretty weak Toronto lineup considering their inability to turn things over from the bottom, but they're pulling a pretty high-end Vegas total. I'm inclined to more trust Vegas against this pitcher. Taijuan Walker, wouldn't shock me if he paid off 6,200 on DraftKings. 86 feels a little high against Texas on FanDuel. He's also coming back from a toe issue. Might be limited for innings, might not. Nelson against the Dodgers is a no. Nick Martinez against the Padres, showing a lot of offense on the Padres side. Not completely out of the question for 66, but with all the better value options, just like why would you in that ballpark against the Padres? It doesn't make sense. Home runs, and then we're out of here. I got to get some updates in. Finish things off. Aaron Judge now the top of the board. Jorge Soler had been, but he dipped in the lineup from where I had him originally. I do like the power upside that we see from San Francisco. There's a couple of very real home run options here in Matt Chapman, Lamont Wade, Jorge Soler, even down here with Tyler Estrada. I think they're an interesting stack for if you're just targeting low-owned contrarian teams. It's just they're going to definitely have to get a couple guys on base if somebody manages to hit that home run ahead of the home run hitter. And Jared Jones is very likely to go out and strike out 10 against this team. Judge, Ohtani, Soto, pretty obvious off the top. Love the Rafael Devers option. We discussed that. Definitely a killer option there. Tyler O'Neill was here, but he's not starting. Schwarber above the magic number. Stanton, given the Yankees upside for power with those 3. And then a couple other guys not all that far behind. Rizzo down here. I'm sure Glaber and Volpe and whatnot are here. With the premium contact that Miller's allowed, that's kind of interesting for the Yanks in Yankee Stadium. It's just Miller is very good. Kind of a both sides are there. Rooker above the magic number. Julio above the magic number with all his struggles. Probably if I had to flip a coin between those two, or if I had to decide between those two, I'd probably go Rooker, even though I like Julio better in a vacuum. Decent power day for the Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, of course, as usual. Philly's not a ton of power outside of Kyle Schwarber. Bryce Harper, a little bit underrepresented at 7.65. Not a killer power day for the Phillies, but any given slate, they could obviously go off for power. Bunch of Dodgers here. All right, that's it for me, fellas. Who's the leverage play off of Glasnow? Bassett? I think Bassett's going to be pretty popular at that price. Mamba. I haven't looked at ownership on DK. I have to imagine he's popular there. I have to imagine he's going to be popular in that matchup at 8,400 on FanDuel as well. Might be one of the other expensive guys with upside. I like Corey Seager for a home run a lot. Mamba's saying Taijuan Walker's still limping. Yeah, it's that toe issue. So, I mean, it's, that's not ideal. Ducking, I do like Nestor Cortez. I think that's an interesting option against Seattle. Don't love the price for Nestor where it is, but not great. Oh, Larry's pointing out Nelson's a follower today. I didn't realize that. They didn't have it listed that way when I put stuff together. So it's Brandon Hughes opening. that doesn't improve things for that situation. Maybe improves things even more for the Dodgers bats. That really changes very little about that Ryan Nelson spot, but it diminishes his ability as a value option on DraftKings. Thanks for pointing that out, Lar, because you won't be able to get the win bonus, or you're much less likely to get the win bonus. So not a great spot there for Diamondbacks pitching. Definitely targetable for Dodgers bats regardless of who's starting that game. All right, guys. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe if you haven't. Jump into the Discord, etc., etc. Check out acemind.io. Hit up the options for kickbacks if you want to, and I will appreciate it. Jesus, I got 36 text messages during that show. Got to see what's going on out there. I'll get updates on the site real quick in the next little bit. Half hour to lock. Somebody out there go win something. Good luck tonight. Said that backward. Usually say it the other way around. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. I'll see you guys tomorrow.